Chapter 617. And this home was beautiful. In Jiang City, one could feel the vitality, exuberant vitality, and indescribable vitality. Everyone walking on the street had faded away from the initial fear of migration and was brimming with joy from the bottom of their hearts. In fact, most people's wishes were very simple. They just wanted to live a good life with no shortage of food and clothes. On this basis, it would be better if they could live with dignity. In Jiang City, they were able to get what they wanted the most and live on with dignity. However, some paranormals who were used to riding roughshod over others in the capital were not used to living here. In the past, they were high and mighty, and they thought that they were not on the same level as others. However, after arriving in Jiang City, Xiaoqing did not give them any special treatment. Although they ate very well, even better than in the capital, they were the same as ordinary people. Although the place they lived in was quite big and spacious, they did not have the same sense of superiority as before. Some people began to complain and feel dissatisfied. They thought that they were powerful paranormals, so they should be treated better than others. How could ordinary people deserve the same treatment as them? At first they were just complaining, but later, they began to have small frictions, contradictions, and even conflicts. The most intense one was when a paranormal forced himself on a little girl, and then threw a crystal core to the little girl, which was called prostitution money. Because in the capital, this kind of thing was very normal. As long as you were powerful, no one would hold you accountable. These people thought that it was not wrong for them to bully the weak, because they were powerful paranormals, and they were more useful than ordinary people. They had contributed more to the whole base. Just like that paranormal, he felt that throwing a crystal core to the little girl was already a reward. If it was in the past, he would not give anything. Xiaoqing went to find her two old men. After all, if she wanted to do something, she had to tell her two old men first. This was the basic respect. The two old men said that she could do whatever she wanted, and they would support her. In the past, because of the environment, they could not do anything. Now that their daughter was in charge of this place, such things should not happen again. Not to mention how beastly this matter was. Just the fact that such a thing happened in their daughter's territory was a slap to their daughter's face. In the afternoon, Xiaoqing gathered everyone, including ordinary people, paranormals, and the representatives of the zombies, Yin Yi and the others. The gathering place was the central square of Jiang City. There were more than 10,000 people. And when everyone was there, Xiaoqing asked first. This morning, someone insulted a little girl. Who was it? Stand out. The paranormal did not care, and then said, What do you mean by insult? I gave her a crystal core, okay? How can you call it an insult when it's a one-off deal? Xiaoqing chuckled and said, If the girl had agreed, it wouldn't have been a humiliation. But you forcibly occupied her body and threw a crystal core to humiliate her. If that's not a humiliation, then what is? Don't you think this is insult? The paranormal was very arrogant. I am a paranormal with level 5 wind power. If there is danger, I will protect them. So what if I sleep with 1 or 2 women? Even if I kill 1 or 2 people, so what? Then he raised his hand and said, We are paranormals, strong people. We ask for the treatment we deserve. If Jiang City can't give us dignity, why are we here? How many people have the same idea as him? Xiaoqing said calmly. A few people stood up one after another. Most of the ability users looked on coldly. They didn't feel that their treatment was bad. They even liked their current life in Jiang City. Those who stood up were those who used to bully the weak in Jingdu and abused their power. Only these few. Xiaoqing looked at them with a gentle gaze. Maybe I should teach you the rules of Jiang City. This is my territory, not the capital. In my territory, you should follow my rules. If you don't follow my rules... With that, Xiaoqing smiled, but her face turned cold in an instant. Then I'll teach you well. Chapter 618. Those paranormals weren't afraid at first. There were 2 sentences that many people believed in. The first one was that the law couldn't punish the majority, and the second one was that there was strength in numbers. They thought that since they were all paranormals, Xiaoqing wouldn't punish them unless there was something wrong with her head. In the next second, Xiaoqing caught the troublemaker. Every time her vine leveled up, it would slowly mutate. After so many mutations, it looked like a tender green vine that didn't have any lethality. That paranormal deeply felt how lethal this vine was. The moment the sharp thorns pierced his skin, a paralyzing toxin was injected into his body, making him unable to resist. The rest of the paranormals saw that the situation wasn't good, so they wanted to take action. Xiaoqing sneered and stomped her feet. Then, Guang came out of the ground with Flower wrapped around his body. Flower stretched its petals lazily, and its tentacles quickly drilled out and cooperated with the vine to catch the rest of the paranormals. After catching them, its tentacles drilled into the paranormals' bodies. After a while, Flower's petals became more delicate and beautiful. However, Flower had a sense of propriety. It didn't directly suck these people dry. It just slowly absorbed their blood and strength like tasting wine. Xiaoqing's 7th level paranormal aura was released in an instant. Everyone felt that cold sweat was about to come out of their heads. You said that the doomsday is an era where the strong preys on the weak, so those people deserve to be persecuted by you. Since I'm stronger than you, does it mean that you deserve to be killed by me? Xiaoqing's eyes were cold, and her face was expressionless. Since you can't understand, I can only use force with you. Everyone, listen to me clearly today. Rivertown is my territory, and there are rules in my territory. There aren't many rules, just 2. First, listen to me. Second, you are not allowed to bully the weak and ordinary people in the city. If you want to bully the weak, you have to think about who the strongest person is. Xiaoqing chuckled and said, I don't care what bad habits you have, and I don't care if you live like a lord in other places. When you're in my territory, even if you're a dragon or a tiger, you have to lie down. If you don't want to stay, you can leave. No one will stop you. The crowd immediately kept quiet out of fear. In fact, most of them were applauding in their hearts. Although Xiaoqing was a little overbearing, she was fair and just. Moreover, these 2 rules weren't harsh. The territory belonged to Xiaoqing. Wasn't it normal to listen to her? Wasn't bullying the weak and ordinary people not allowed to be bullied? Wasn't that a good thing? If the atmosphere wasn't so serious, they would have really applauded. It could be said that even at the end of the world, most people were relatively normal. Only a few people thought that they had some ability and wanted to be like a crab. In the end, when their legs were chopped off, they could only blame themselves for being too arrogant. Did you hear me clearly? Do you need me to repeat it a second time? Xiaoqing asked the poor guy who was hung up by the vines gently. That guy was so scared that he almost peed in his pants. He didn't expect that Xiaoqing's strength would be so terrifying. He didn't even have the intention to resist. He only wanted to apologize, admit his mistake, and use all means to let Xiaoqing let him go. Chapter 619. Where's the girl? Come out and let me have a look, Xiaoqing said softly. After a while, a girl who looked a little haggard came out of the crowd. She looked only 15 or 16 years old, wearing an old men's t-shirt and a pair of clean jeans. She was very delicate, but her face was pale and thin like a bamboo pole. Xiaoqing asked the paranormal gently, Are you willing to apologize? Yes. The paranormal said repeatedly. Xiaoqing put him down. He was still paralyzed, and as soon as he was put down, he fell to the ground. Xiaoqing kicked him, and he knelt on the ground like a toad. The man gritted his teeth and said, I'm sorry. The girl clenched her fists, and her body was still trembling slightly. She gathered her courage, raised her head and said, I don't forgive him. The girl's voice was very loud, and some people were talking about it. Some people thought that since she had already apologized, she should stop. After all, he was a paranormal, and there was no benefit in offending him. Some people also felt that it was a bit too much for the girl to hold on to it. Of course, some people thought that it was right for the girl not to forgive. She was so young, and she was ruined. Why should she forgive the murderer who ruined her? This paranormal had the responsibility to apologize, and she also had the right to not forgive him. The girl trembled and said loudly, I don't forgive him. When she said this, the girl's voice sounded like she was crying. I know that this time, it's because of Sister Castellan that I can get the respect that should belong to me. It's reasonable to say that I should forgive him, because I can't make things difficult for Sister Castellan. But I can't do it. I really hate him. I really hate him. The girl trembled like a blade of grass in the wind. Xiaoqing couldn't help but touch her head, and then said gently, "You're right not to forgive him. You have to follow your heart." "Sister Castellan, don't you blame me?" The girl tried to hold back her tears. Xiaoqing shook her head. "I don't blame you. People who do wrong should be punished. After all, rules are set, and they are meant to be followed." As she spoke, she looked at the person kneeling on the ground and said, "If you were stronger than me, then you would naturally be able to break my rules. But the reality is that your strength is inferior to mine, so you have to abide by my rules. Now that you've disobeyed my rules, I naturally have my own way of dealing with you in my territory." The man kneeling on the ground looked at the girl with some resentment. He felt that he had already lowered himself. He had knelt down and apologized, but the girl was still not satisfied. However, at this moment, a vine pierced into his left eye socket and dug around in a very human-like manner. Finally, it pulled out a round eyeball. The man let out an ear-piercing scream before covering his eyes and rolling on the ground. Xiaoqing threw the eyeball to the side in disdain, and then said, "I don't like the look in your eyes. Don't let me see it a second time." "I forgot. You won't have the chance to let me see it a second time." She stepped on the man's calf methodically, and a few vines came up and forcibly fixed the man to the ground. Xiaoqing took a military knife and dismembered the man alive. Dehua opened her petals at the side, revealing her sharp teeth. Xiaoqing cut off a section of the man's arm and leg and threw it to Dehua as a snack. "I'll change these disobedient parts for you. Don't thank me. Please call me Red Scarf." Xiaoqing cut the man into a human stick. Below the neck, there was only his chest left. Below the waist, she cut off everything. He lay on the ground, unable to move. Chapter 620. This scene was really bloody. Some people's faces turned pale in an instant. Some were already secretly disgusted, but they didn't dare to make a sound. They all covered their mouths. Xiaoqing used the vines to drag the remaining people over. "Look at your own fate. Don't make me repeat it a second time. Did you see it clearly?" Without waiting for them to answer, she dragged them closer and closer to the remaining half of the man on the ground. Because they were too close, their faces were pressed against the man's body, and blood flowed into their nostrils. One of them, Yun Qi, directly stuck his face on the cross-section of the human's lower body. His intestines and other things were all stuck on his face. It made him feel nauseous, but he couldn't vomit it out. It was a very pitiful feeling. "Did you see it clearly?" Xiaoqing asked for the second time. This time, someone finally could answer. The person who answered said with difficulty, "I saw it clearly." Xiaoqing then threw everyone away. Then she said, "This is my temper. It doesn't matter if you don't like it. But in my territory, you have to follow my rules. Don't make me repeat this for the fourth or fifth time today. I have a bad temper. You don't want to know the consequences of angering me." Everyone became obedient. They were afraid that they would be used as an example. She casually kicked away the human body under her feet. The flower secretly opened its petals and ate the human. After eating, it quickly closed its petals and sneaked away. Xiaoqing was too lazy to educate it. She said to everyone, "Why did you all travel thousands of miles to come here? I hope that everyone can abide by the rules of Jiang City. This is my Jiang City and everyone's Jiang City, so I shouldn't be the only one to protect it. I will form an inspection team. Anyone who finds something like this will be killed without mercy. Jiang City doesn't need such people. Of course, it's not just women. Everyone lives in the same place, so we should be united. No matter if it's the elderly, children, women, or ordinary people, no one should be bullied. I hope that everyone can unite and build Jiang City together to welcome the coming storm." After saying that, Xiaoqing glanced at Mu Lin. Mu Lin understood her meaning and said, "No matter if you're an ordinary person or a paranormal, you're all part of Jiang City. So, no matter who is humiliated, it's an internal conflict. Now that we're facing a formidable enemy, how can we have time for internal conflicts? You came to Jiang City and voluntarily became its residents. Everyone should hope that Jiang City will be better in the future." She gently incited everyone and then said, "In the next few days, there will probably be a great army coming. To deal with Jiang City, what we need the most at this time is unity. Those who know medicine, first aid, or simple bandaging, please sign up with me after the meeting. I will form a first aid team. After some simple and systematic training, you will be prepared for the coming battle. In addition to the first aid team, there are many other things that need to be done. I will post all of them in a while. Everyone can take a look and sign up according to what you are good at." After the official business, Mulin suddenly said, "Now everyone tell me, what should we do? Work hard to protect Jiang City. Work hard for our home." After a short silence, a voice sounded, followed by a whole group of voices. The two old men, who had been watching from the side for a long time, felt a little hot-blooded. Although Xiaoqing's means were a little bloody, they had to admit that the policy of conciliation was really not suitable for Jiang City in the face of a great enemy. Although the scene just now was a little bloody, after this incident, the cohesion, unity of Jiang City would be much stronger. A strong force needed a strong leader. Xiaoqing was this strong leader. They were suddenly filled with confidence for the upcoming battle. The people below were also shouting. At first, their voices were uneven. In the end, they were united and their shouts were earth-shattering. "Work hard to protect Jiang City. Work hard for our home." Xiaoqing listened to their passionate voices and nodded with satisfaction. With more people, trouble would naturally follow. But similarly, as long as there was enough cohesion, the advantage of having more people would be fully reflected. Initially, she only had less than 40% confidence for the upcoming battle. Now she had 60% confidence. Jiang City would definitely become better, and she would see it happen with her own eyes. Chapter 621. The construction of the exterior of Jiangqing City was completed very quickly. Under Xiaoqing's deterrence, no one was bitten by zombies after running into the active areas. Everything was carried out peacefully and smoothly. On the 12th day after the relocation, the Qian family's team was finally formed. There were fewer people in the team compared to the first meeting. For example, Meng Shen and the rest who were close to Xiaoqing, as well as Yan Qi's old boss at the end of the month. With the formation of the team, people from all over turned their attention to Jiangqing City. Many people were waiting for the war. Regardless of whether they were on Xiaoqing's side or the Qian family's side, the calmest person was actually Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing instructed her subordinates to set up all the fortifications. After that, she quietly planted vegetables in her garden. She had done everything she could. Now, all she needed to do was to wait quietly for the war that was about to break out. Just as the team led by the Qian family was about to set out and approach Jiangqing City, Yan Qiyue and Yinyi brought Xiaoqing a piece of news that she wasn't sure if it was good or bad. They realized that all the toxins in the soil came from the water. The toxins in the water weren't naturally formed. In other words, someone had poisoned the soil. The two of them spent the entire night researching and realized that the water and soil in Jiangqing City were very pure and had no toxins. However, the water and soil outside contained a certain amount of toxins. The amount of toxins was more in the water. After discovering this, the two of them went to the riverside behind Jiangqing City. The reason why Jiangqing City was called Jiangqing City was because it was backed by a river. This river wasn't as long as Yanjiang, but it had nurtured generations of people in Jiangqing City. After their research, they realized that the water in the river wasn't poisonous. Then, they brought people to Yanjiang to collect samples and realized that the water in Yanjiang was poisonous. Because Jiangqing City was in danger, they didn't go along Yanjiang to find the source of the toxins. After collecting samples, they returned. When they returned, they did some research and found that the poison in Yin River was man-made. Someone must have delivered the poison at the source of the river. This was a coincidence, because Yin River passed through 99% of the cities in the country. It was the longest and largest river in the country. Especially after the apocalypse, almost all the survivor bases relied on Yin River to build and use the water from Yin River. Even if they didn't rely on the Yin River, they relied on the tributaries of the Yin River. Yin Qiuyue even suspected that the other larger rivers had also been poisoned. Then why was Jiang City spared from the disaster? There were only two possibilities. The first was that Jiang City was heavily guarded, and the other party did not have a chance to poison the river. This possibility was relatively small, because there would not be anyone watching the river at all times. It was very easy to poison the river. Secondly, someone had deliberately framed Jiang Cheng. The current situation must have been planned by that person. He wanted to destroy Jiang City. After receiving this news, Xiaoqing relaxed a lot. It was actually the best outcome, out of all the possibilities. The force of nature was irresistible. If the toxins were caused by the deterioration of the environment, then there was nothing she could do. If it was just someone poisoning, then there would be a solution. What we need to do now is to prepare for war. This battle is going to start at any moment. Even if we send someone to tell them that Yin Jiang was poisoned, they won't believe us. The arrow is already on the bow, and it has to be released. Only when we hurt them, and let them know whose fist is bigger, will they listen to what we say. Chapter 622. Xiaoqing sneered and said, "Human desire is the scariest thing in this world. Desire will lead this war and nothing can stop it. The only thing that can end it is blood. This is an unavoidable war. There will be many people who will lose their lives in this war, because of some people's desires. This is unavoidable. All we can do is to protect ourselves and hurt them. While fighting for the right to speak, we can also establish Rivertown's position." Mu Lin said coldly, "Qing, you don't have to feel sad for those people. Their lives are important. Are our lives not important?" "I know." Xiaoqing stood up and looked at the city wall not far away. "I'm no longer alone. Rivertown is no longer the Rivertown of the past. Now there are tens of thousands of lives in my hands. I'm a leader, and I have to think for the people living under my rule. I only hope that after this war ends, no one else will dare to plot against Rivertown." "You're right to think that way." Mu Lin shrugged and said, "Increase the number of patrol teams from 6 to 12 at night. The war is about to start, and it could erupt at any moment. It's better to be careful." "Okay." Xiaoqing nodded and carefully sowed the potatoes. The sprouted potatoes were found in a cellar along with some blooming carrots. They were all brought back by the search team. The potatoes had already sprouted and couldn't be eaten. Otherwise they could easily be poisoned. Xiaoqing cut them into slices and planted them. Potatoes were easy to grow, and it was more convenient to plant them. Carrots were more troublesome. They could only wait for the carrots to have seeds and plant them. Rivertown's geographical location was very good. It was close to the mountains and rivers. The transportation was also very convenient. Of course, the most important thing was that the climate was good. All kinds of crops could survive. After Xiaoqing washed her hands, she sat in front of the sofa and began to look at the map. It was not that she had no ambition, but she had not shown it before. In addition, her ambition was not big, and it was enough for her to live well with her family. Now that the situation forced her to stand up, what followed was an explosion of ambition and ambition. When she was obediently living in a corner with her family and friends, someone would point the finger at them and make their lives uneasy, forcing her to stand at the forefront. Since he had already stepped out, why not go all out and turn Jiang City into the biggest base and have the highest status? Since superior strength was not enough to protect his family and friends, then what if he had absolute power? There was an old saying, "When you send Buddha to the West, you should do everything thoroughly." Xiaoqing was such a person. It was fine if she didn't do something, but once she did it, she would do her best. For example, now, just by looking at the map, Rivertown's geographical location was even better than capital cities. The only thing that made it inferior to capital city was that it was slightly more remote. Remoteness was the easiest thing to solve, especially after the apocalypse. As long as the roads were well built, it would not be a problem at all. Xiaoqing thought it through clearly. She planned the future step by step. And those plans for the future had a premise, that was she had to win this battle. If she lost, all the plans would be wasted. If she won, then a skyscraper would be built from the ground. The Qian family's men and horses quickly arrived near Rivertown. They then set up camp, and formed a barrier with Rivertown. Xiaoqing knew that the battle was about to begin. The Qian family had many people, and they could not afford to delay. Chapter 623. There were so many people. How much food did they need every day? Now was the time when food was the most scarce. They must have prepared for this battle with everything they had. Xiaoqing could imagine their faces. It was nothing more than, after winning, we can get the method to prevent the land from being polluted. Then we can get as much food as we want. Logically speaking, as long as the other side was exhausted, Xiaoqing's side would win sooner or later. After all, as long as Xiaoqing relied on Jiang City, which was such a good fortification, she could slowly wear down the other side. When they ran out of supplies, this battle would be won without a fight. It was simply too easy to win. However, Xiaoqing didn't choose this simplest and most labor-saving method. She chose to fight head-on. On the night when the other group of people arrived in Jiang City, they launched a surprise attack. The time of the surprise attack was exactly 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. This was the time when normal people were the most tired and sleepy. Logically speaking, the success rate of a surprise attack at this time was the highest. However, they forgot that in addition to humans, there were also thousands of zombies in Jiang City. The patrol team of Jiang City was divided into 2 groups. One group was composed of humans, and the other group was composed of zombies. The human patrol team was responsible for patrolling during the day, which was from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the evening. The zombie patrol team was responsible for patrolling at night. That was to say, from 8 o'clock in the evening to 8 o'clock in the morning. They didn't feel sleepy at all. Even if they patrolled all night, they would be fine. It could be said that there was no free time in 24 hours a day. Did you think that no one would be able to stop you by launching a surprise attack in the middle of the night? The vanguard team had just entered Jiang City when they heard the shrill alarm. The gate of Jiang City suddenly opened, and a group of zombies rushed out. The people who came to launch the surprise attack were divided into 2 groups, the vanguard team and the backup team. The vanguard team had hundreds of people, but they were instantly submerged in the sea of zombies. The backup team had thousands of people, but they couldn't hold on for more than 2 minutes. When the rest of the backup team saw this, they immediately ran away. They still had self-awareness. When they saw that the situation wasn't good, of course, they had to strategically retreat. Therefore, the first surprise attack of the Qian family ended in complete annihilation. Nearly 2,000 paranormals lost their lives. The next day, the people of the Qian family got up and saw 2 pyramids of corpses piled up at the gate of Jiang City, towering into the clouds. The head of the Qian family had fainted on the ground at that time and needed emergency treatment. In the end, in order to prevent the plague from spreading, the 2,000 corpses were all cremated on the spot. The ashes from the cremation could be used to pave a road. Xiaoqing stood on the top of the city wall, looking at the carriages of ashes being transported out. Her face was expressionless. Those who died were the backbone of the human race. They were all powerful paranormals. It would be a lie to say that she didn't feel sad. However, she couldn't show mercy at all. Otherwise, it would be her people who were hurt. She was cruel and vicious. Her only bottom line was the people she protected under her wings. If a person lived in this world without an obsession, then what was the difference between them and a salted fish? The first battle has yet to truly begin. Let's wait and see. After today, no one will dare to look down on Jiang City. Xiaoqing leaned on the city wall and muttered to herself. When it was time for the real battle, the Qian family pushed out a row of cannons. The black muzzles were all aimed at Jiang City. After Doomsday, there were many weapons that couldn't be manufactured anymore. However, most of the bases stored some heavy firearms. For example, this type of cannon was very powerful. It was very useful to use it to attack a city. Xiaoqing's face slightly changed. Her thoughts had been stagnant on paranormals. She had forgotten about the firearms. Chapter 624. It was really her fault. When the enemy gave the order, and the cannonballs were fired, Xiaoqing stood at the top of the city wall, and slowly raised her hand. It had been a long time since she had experienced what it felt like to overdraw on her special ability. This was the first time she had used all her strength since she reached the 7th level. Regardless of whether they were standing at the bottom of the city walls or on top of the city walls, they could see green vines growing out from the bottom of the city walls at lightning speed. Layer after layer of vines intertwined and protected the entire river town in the center. At least, the side directly facing the cannon was completely protected by a shield made of vines. This scene was very shocking. There were many wood-type superpowered people, but none of them could do what Xiaoqing did. Just the range alone was enough to make people's jaws drop. What Xiaoqing used was just the most ordinary vines. The first layer of vines formed a wall that was taller than the city walls. When it was protecting Jiang City, the second layer of vines climbed up and formed a second layer of wall. Layer after layer of vines stacked on top of each other. When the 8th layer was formed, the cannonballs hit. The cannonballs exploded on the wall of vines. Broken leaves, broken branches, and light green juice flowed all over the ground. The wall of vines was blown up one after another. However, only 2 layers were blown up. There were still 6 layers behind. Even the force of the vibration was offset by the layers behind. The people standing on the city wall only felt a slight shake under their feet, and then they couldn't feel anything else. This wasn't the most terrible thing. The most terrible thing was that the wall of vines was still increasing. On the Qian family's side, the cannonballs were thrown here as if they were free, but the speed of the explosion was not as fast as the wall of vines. The people in charge of the Qian family's side were shocked. They had never seen a paranormal who could do this. After the shock, they flew into a rage out of humiliation. One of the people in charge jumped and shouted, "Keep shooting! I don't believe that her supernatural power is endless." The other's eyes also lit up. "Yes, I don't believe that we can't exhaust her supernatural power." But after a few minutes, the person below said with an ugly expression, "Master, there are no more cannonballs." After the apocalypse, it was difficult to even fill one's stomach, not to mention making firearms. The military factories had stopped production long ago, and the ammunition was limited. This time, they had prepared a total of 500 rounds of ammunition, but they did not expect that all of them would be used up on the city wall. Not only did they not manage to knock down a single stone, they did not even manage to knock down a single stone. All of their energy was wasted on the vines. At this moment, the Qian family's morale was almost gone. They were dumbfounded. Was there really such a powerful paranormal? With his own strength, he could withstand hundreds of artillery shells without any signs of exhaustion. Compared to the low morale of the Qian family, the people of Jiang City were cheering. Xiaoqing was powerful, which meant that Jiang City was powerful. After all, Xiaoqing was the boss of Jiang City. In fact, Xiaoqing was already exhausted at this time. She hadn't felt this kind of exhaustion for a long time. Suddenly, she felt weak all over and had a terrible headache. But she had to hold on, she couldn't fall. "First echelon, get ready." Xiaoqing gritted her teeth and shouted. "Yes." Qin Zishi saluted seriously. He looked like a professional. He went down the city wall with several paranormals and began to prepare. Hundreds of cages were pushed to the door. Inside the cages were ferocious mutant beasts. These mutant beasts were all tamed by Xiaoqing's people. They were waiting for today's battle. Although the Qian family's morale was low, they had already come to this point. If they stretched out their head, they would be stabbed. They gritted their teeth and wanted to fight. Chapter 625. The paranormals who were already prepared began to move forward. It was interesting that they had almost reached the gate of Jiangqing City, but they didn't see anyone from Jiangqing City. Just when the people from the Qian family thought that the people from Jiang City were afraid and didn't dare to come out, the city gates opened. A 2-meter-tall gorilla walked in front. It was dark and swarthy and looked extremely ferocious. Behind it were tigers, lions, leopards, and wolves. Anyway, they were all very fierce beasts. In the middle, there were a few small animals like cats. Don't look at these small and delicate animals. They were very docile before the apocalypse, but after the apocalypse, they were the most natural killers. Take cats for example. They were small in size and very fast. Their small claws were very sharp and could easily slit a person's throat. Their teeth were even sharper and could kill people invisibly. The first echelon of beasts quickly rushed into the crowd. As soon as they rushed into the crowd, they began to kill unscrupulously. Only broken limbs and blood could be seen splashing everywhere. Some paranormals reacted quickly. For example, ice paranormals could quickly freeze a mutant animal. Another example was earth paranormals. They could hold up earth walls and shields as a defense. At this time, the second echelon of Jiangqing City also came out. The second echelon was composed of paranormals. The leader was Yan Hanqing. He raised his hand, and a purple lightning quickly fell. Coincidentally, a water paranormal had just formed a waterfall to trap those mutant beasts and drown them in it. Yan Hanqing's lightning fell on the waterfall. Water could conduct electricity. The powerful lightning quickly spread in the water. Some of the paranormals who were relatively close to it were unlucky and were electrocuted in an instant. The rest of the paranormals also began to attack. They specifically targeted the strongest paranormals in the crowd to block them and prevent them from attacking those mutant beasts. Without the obstruction of the high-level paranormals, the mutant beasts were killing machines one after another. Ordinary paranormals couldn't resist at all. Soon, the ground was covered with a layer of corpses. When the survivors were fighting, they stepped on either human limbs or pools of blood. The scene was particularly tragic. If one were to look down from the sky, ignoring the colors of the special abilities, all that was left was a patch of red. That patch of red was like a drop of red ink dripping onto a white piece of paper. It quickly spread out and slowly dyed the ground red. No one knew how many people had died. Only those who were still alive could feel that their feet were covered in blood. The blood had already submerged the soles of their shoes, and the soles of their feet were all sticky and wet. When they retreated, countless bloody footprints were left on both sides, stretching all the way to their respective camps. Pools of blood, after slightly solidifying, showed a dark red color and slowly seeped into the ground. The morale of the Qian family had reached the lowest point. They had calculated that they had lost thousands of people in the first head-on battle. These thousands of people were all high-level paranormals. They were the backbone of their dozens of bases. All of them were killed in this battle. The most important thing was that this was only the first head-on battle. They had suffered heavy losses. What was left in Jiang City were only dozens of beast corpses. Very few people had died. As everyone knew, zombies were the most abundant in Jiang City. In other words, the main force of Jiang City hadn't appeared yet. The senior members of the Qian family's team had already said, "Why don't we retreat? If this goes on, we won't even have the chance to win." Chapter 626. They weren't exaggerating. Judging from the current situation, Jiangqing City obviously still had a lot of strength left. As for them, they had already tried their best and lost miserably. If they insisted on fighting, the biggest possibility was that they would be completely wiped out. They didn't dare to say anything else, but at least they dared to say that this group of people had gathered about 20% of the country's mutants. If they really died here, it would be a great loss for the country. It might not be a serious injury, but at least it would be painful. Therefore, many people wanted to retreat. However, the Qian family knew that they had already formed a blood feud with Shaoqing and Jiangqing City. Unless one side was wiped out, this feud couldn't be resolved. The others were still fine. Once they scattered, no one would know that they had participated in the battle against Jiangqing City. At most, they would deny it. After all, they weren't the masterminds. Unless Cheng Lishua lost his mind and wanted to make more enemies, he would definitely not pursue the matter. Only the Qian family couldn't escape. They had to fight to the death with Jiangqing City. It was either you die or I live. There was no third way. Behind their backs, who knew how many people began to laugh at the Qian family for being short-sighted. They had set up such an enemy for themselves. Now they could neither advance nor retreat. They had forced themselves into a dead end. Why bother? However, if they wanted to be the one who stood out, they should have thought of the consequences of standing out. They would either fly high enough or be shot down with a slingshot. After the first confrontation, the morale of the Qian family was broken. It couldn't be said that their cohesiveness was too weak. It could only be said that Jiangqing City was too strong. They could still resist a needle to an on. But what if the on was a bullet? It was like throwing an egg against a rock. The result was obvious. On the night when the battle ended, a group of people who thought they were wise withdrew from the battle and ran away. The head of the Qian family was so angry that he couldn't catch his breath and almost lost his life. When it was close to midnight, they had no choice but to hold a mobilization meeting. The head of the Qian family shouted at the top of his lungs, "Is there any use in running away now? No. We have already taken action against Jiang City. Once Jiang City recovers, they will definitely not let us go. The only thing we can do now is to gather our strength and fight them once more. It's either you die or I live. Look at those people. What's the use of running away now? They have also attacked Jiang City. Jiang City will not let them go. Who would let them go when they have the strength to kill their enemies?" Some people felt that it made sense. There was no turning back. They had already reached this point. What was the use of regretting? They had no way out. Even if there was a cliff in front of them, they could only force themselves forward. After this mobilization meeting, the hearts of the people were at least stabilized. Only a small portion of such a large group had left, and they had not suffered any serious injuries. After they rested for a while, they launched the second head-on battle. At this time, Qin Zishi had already been carried back. After he commanded these mutated beasts, he had completely overdrawn his supernatural ability. Those who came out standing, and those who came back lying down would not be able to recover without at least 10 days or half a month. However, he had really made a miraculous contribution this time. With him, many fewer people in Jiangqing City would die. Xiaoqing waved her hand and said to him, "Have a good rest. Leave the rest to us." As mentioned before, what was the most abundant in Jiangqing City? The most abundant zombies. Chapter 627. There were at least a 5-digit number of zombies in Jiang City. Most of them were above level 4, with a small number of level 3 zombies. Most of them were level 4, level 5, and there were also many level 6 zombies. Putting everything else aside, this force alone could shake the whole country. It would be a piece of cake for them to flatten a base. Don't look down on Rivertown. In terms of combat power, there really wasn't a base that could compare with Rivertown. Didn't you see that there were more than a dozen big and small forces that came to encircle and annihilate Rivertown? In the end, they were still beaten to a pulp by Rivertown. Those who looked down on Jiang City had to shed some blood to know the pain. In the second round of head-on confrontation, Jiang City sent out a total of 2,000 high-level zombies. They were all level 5 zombies, plus 1,000 paranormals. They had been fighting for a long time. From the beginning until now, they couldn't remember how many people had died. They could only see that the ground in front of Jiang City was dark red. If they dug with tools, they would find that the ground about 20 centimeters below the surface had been soaked with blood. When they were fighting, Xiaoqing sat on the high platform and watched expressionlessly. Too many people had died in this battle that shouldn't have happened. Even cold-blooded people would feel uncomfortable. "When this battle is over, we can start our plan," Xiaoqing said lightly. Mu Lin, who had been standing aside for a long time, nodded. Mu Lin was probably more ruthless than Xiaoqing. When they were mercenaries, both of them were ruthless. However, after Xiaoqing had a son and a lover, she was slowly softened. After having a family, even the toughest and cold-blooded people would be polished off their sharpest edges. "Qing, leave this kind of thing to me in the future," Mu Lin said softly. Mu Lin said softly. She looked at Xiaoqing. Although she didn't say anything, she was definitely upset. She couldn't bear to see Xiaoqing upset. Seeing her upset made her feel even worse. Xiaoqing didn't say anything. She just said, "Tonight, let the people harvest all the vegetables that can be harvested. Kill some pigs, sheep, and so on. Hold a banquet. It's not a celebration, but everyone has worked hard for so long. They should eat something good." Mu Lin nodded and went ahead to give the order. The battle ended without any suspense. When it ended, Xiaoqing sent her men to the battlefield to collect the corpses. When they found that they were still alive, They carried them back and sent them to the emergency room. Those who were already dead had to be gathered together and burned in one go. It was very accurate to say that a person's death was like an extinguished lamp. No matter how you were when you were alive, you would only be left with ashes after death. Especially in this post-apocalyptic world, those who were unlucky would only become food for wild beasts. Those who were lucky would at least have a place to bury their ashes. The corpses were placed in a row in the square. The people in the city came to collect them. Those who had relatives would take the corpses back and bury them properly. Those who had no relatives would be burned and buried together. When the entire Qin family and Tan family moved to Jiang City, the first thing Xiao Qing did was to count the population and register everyone. Now those who died in battle could be found out by flipping through the information. Those who had relatives would be given pensions. Those who didn't have relatives or friends, there was no way. At night, when the banquet was held in Jiang City, the Qian family was in an uproar. They almost fought. After all, they had suffered heavy losses. It was only 2 head-on confrontations, but they lost 1/3 of their men. Chapter 628. If they were to fight another 2 rounds, wouldn't they be completely annihilated? No one was willing to fight a battle that they were bound to lose. More and more people wanted to retreat. Even if the Qian family had hundreds of mouths, and each of them was eloquent, it was useless. After all, the truth was right in front of them. They didn't even have a 10% chance of winning. Why should they waste their time and manpower here? Before the sun rose, almost 1/3 of the people had left. When the sun rose, people from Rivertown came out with loudspeakers. Not to mention the Qian family, even people a few miles away could hear it. People on the other side, listen up. Our boss has something to say. Mu Lin tried the loudspeaker. When he found that there was no problem, he started to shout. Our boss said that the Qian family is our enemy, and we won't rest until we're dead. However, the others aren't. If you're willing to leave, you can leave now. Rivertown will definitely let bygones be bygones. After shouting the same words a few times, he said again, I'll give you an hour. After an hour, Rivertown will launch our first attack. If you're still here, don't blame us for being merciless. We'll treat you as the Qian family and deal with you. After shouting for 10 minutes, Mu Lin stopped. He started to organize the people and prepared for the first attack. He believed that most people weren't stupid. When they saw the situation, they knew what to do. Moreover, they had already pointed out a clear path for these people. If they didn't take the clear path and insisted on sending themselves to their deaths, there was nothing they could do. They could persuade other things. But if they insisted on sending themselves to their deaths, how could they persuade them? The moment Mu Lin shouted his words, the other side really scattered like a swarm of bees. They had gathered for the sake of benefits, but they had scattered for the sake of their own lives. The head of the Qian family sat on the ground with a dispirited look. This was because he knew that this time, it was really over. He couldn't escape. He couldn't fight. Other than waiting for death, what else could he do? 2 days ago, when someone tried to escape, they would still try to persuade him or stop him. But now they had completely given up. If he wanted to leave, then leave. They couldn't stop him from escaping. Even some of the subordinates of the Qian family also ran away with the fleeing team. This was clearly a case of monkeys scattering when the tree fell. Although they used to rely on the Qian family for a living, they were not so loyal that they would give up their lives for the Qian family. Husband and wife were birds in the same forest. When disaster struck, they would fly away separately. Moreover, it was a group of people who had gathered together because of benefits. It didn't even take an hour. In less than 10 minutes, all the people were gone. Xiao Qing sent out several squads of paranormals and zombies, preparing to clean up the Qian family completely, leaving no one alive. Not only that, but she also prepared to go to the Qian family's base camp after the battle and kill those who stayed behind. Don't blame her for being cruel. If you cut the weeds without removing the roots, they would grow again when the spring breeze came. At the same time, Xiao Qing began to contact the rest of the families on the other side. She was going to have a meeting to figure out who had poisoned the Qian family. As long as this matter was not figured out, Jiang City would not be peaceful. Only when the source of the trouble was figured out could this matter really come to an end. The Qian family had lost their fighting spirit. When they sent people to clean up, they didn't encounter much resistance. Xiao Qing had already given an order before that they didn't need to leave anyone alive. It was enough to kill all of them. In addition to some people who were responsible for encirclement and suppression, there were also some people who were in charge of cleaning up those who had escaped. Anyone who wanted to escape was guarded in all directions. It was impossible for them to escape. The battle was soon over. Xiao Qing's side had very few casualties. Yan Hanqing, who was in charge of leading the team, was commanding people to clean up the battlefield. The heads were placed on one side, and the corpses were placed on the other. All the corpses were collected and burned. Maybe they could be used as fertilizer. The heads were placed on the other side and counted one by one. The number of heads represented the number of people killed. On the tall pyramid of heads, the head of the Qian family was stacked on the top. There were still bloodstains in his eyes. At that time, he already knew that the Qian family was finished. Whether it was those who came out or those who stayed behind, they were all finished. This was the result of a man whose heart was not content, was like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. If they weren't greedy at that time and insisted on gathering people to attack Jiang City, they wouldn't have ended up like this. As a result, the entire Qian family was uprooted, shaken off the soil, and burned as firewood. It was said that a moment was enough to cause eternal hatred. The ancients didn't lie. Chapter 629. After killing everyone in the Qian family, Xiao Qing sent out a message to invite the leaders of the biggest bases for a chat. While chatting, she sent people out to destroy the Qian family in the capital city. Xiao Qing had already sent out the message that no one who was still alive should be left alive. Don't blame her for being cruel. When the Qian family attacked Jiang City, they should have thought of this day. No matter what the result was, it was their own choice. No one forced them to make a choice. Therefore, it wasn't pitiful for them to end up like this. The only pitiful ones were the old, weak, women and children of the Qian family. It was a pity that they trusted the wrong person. It was a pity that their surname was Qian. That was all. The invitation that Xiao Qing sent out had only 2 sentences. The first sentence was to invite them to Hope Survivor Base to gather. The second sentence was that the reason for the gathering was that she had found the reason why the land was contaminated. Why didn't they gather in Jiang City? It was because Xiao Qing knew that Jiang City was her base. There weren't many base chiefs who dared to come alone or bring a few people with them. In order to make them feel at ease, they chose to meet at Hope Survivor Base. Hope Survivor Base was in a cooperative state with them. The young base chief, Tang Tianda, was working for Xiao Qing. Therefore, they were trustworthy. When Jiang City was attacked, Hope Survivor Base sent some supplies and people over. Xiao Qing didn't want to be a burden to them, so she sent them back. After all, Hope Survivor Base had just gained a foothold in the country. It wasn't easy for them to be involved in this incident. It would be too much. Moreover, their relationship wasn't as close as Xiao Qing's relationship with the Qin family and the Tan family. They didn't need to go to this extent. It was already a great friendship that they were willing to send people over to help and bring supplies. When the few base chiefs first received the news, they were very hesitant. If they went, they would have to worry about whether it was a conspiracy. If they didn't go, look, a few base chiefs had joined forces to attack Jiang City. In the end, all of them were annihilated. The Qian family, who was in charge, was even more miserable. Not a single person survived the battle. It was still fine if they didn't make it back from the battlefield. The people from Jiang City came to the capital city openly and exterminated the Qian family openly. Their actions were swift and decisive, and they didn't even have the chance to react. In their eyes, Xiao Qing was simply a lunatic, and a powerful one at that. Ordinary people couldn't afford to provoke her. They thought about it carefully, and finally realized that they had to go. There were 3 reasons for them to go. First, Xiao Qing set the meeting place at Hope Survivor Base instead of Jiang City, which showed enough sincerity. Second, if they didn't go, they were afraid that Xiao Qing would suddenly go crazy and bring tens of thousands of people and zombies to destroy their base. This kind of thing was absolutely possible for a lunatic to do. Third, the information that Xiaoqing revealed to them was indeed what they wanted to know. If Xiaoqing really had a way to improve the current situation, or if she knew why the land was polluted, then they had to go. So after thinking about it, all the base chiefs finally gritted their teeth and replied to the letter, saying that they would meet at Hope Survivor Base on time. After the letter was sent, Xiaoqing didn't care anymore. It was their business whether they came or not. Anyway, she had already made things clear, so there was nothing they could do if they didn't come. Among the people who came this time, there were two acquaintances. One was Meng Shen, and the other was Yin Pingshen. Both of them knew Xiaoqing not long after the apocalypse. However, there were so many things that Xiaoqing didn't have the time or opportunity to go back and see them. Gradually, they became a little unfamiliar with each other. Chapter 630. However, it was only a little. When they met again, although they were a little emotional, they quickly recovered their previous feelings. These two men didn't even bring a single guard, and they were the fastest to arrive. Xiaoqing's message had only been sent out a short while ago, and the two of them had already arrived. It was as if they had immediately packed their things and rushed over the moment they received the news. Xiaoqing never liked to express her gratitude to others, but she could clearly see this kind of supportive attitude. She immediately asked someone to arrange their accommodation, and then they had a meal together. Yin Pingshen was still the same, but Meng Shen seemed to be quieter. The few of them gathered together and had a simple chat. They didn't say much. After about 4 to 5 days, everyone was present. Xiaoqing and the host, Tang Yaozu, were in charge of arranging the itinerary. To put it bluntly, it was a simple tour around the base and a meal. Then they sat together. Xiaoqing was the most direct person. She went straight to the point. A few days ago, I don't know who spread the news, and even sent people to deal with Jiang City. Everyone has seen the outcome of the matter. Fortunately, 2 days ago, my subordinates discovered a problem. That is, all the land and water sources were polluted, but it wasn't because the environment was evolving to be bad. After piquing everyone's curiosity, she didn't keep them in suspense. She only said, "This is a conspiracy. It's not only targeted at Jiangcheng, but also all the bases. Because I discovered that the reason why the land and water sources were contaminated was because someone had poisoned the water sources." Her words were like a stone that stirred up 1,000 ripples. Everyone was stunned. How could it be poison? What kind of poison could contaminate 99% of the bases in the country? A few of the base chiefs began to whisper to each other in private. Xiaoqing slammed the table. Then she said, "Be quiet and listen to me. Besides, I also discovered that Yin River and its tributaries were poisoned, but the waters near Jiangcheng were safe. Then the question is, if the person who poisoned the water had the ability to affect the whole country, why didn't he poison Jiangcheng too? Think about the Qian family that attacked Jiangcheng some time ago. The reason is self-evident, right?" Someone immediately plucked up his courage and said, "Who knows if it was Jiangcheng who poisoned the water? After poisoning the whole country, only Jiangcheng wasn't poisoned. Since they were discovered, it's possible that they turned around and blamed us." Xiaoqing sneered. Then she said, "If I had the intention to poison you, I would have poisoned your cheap mouth mute first. I'm sick of hearing it." That person was so angry that his face turned green. He slammed the table and wanted to stand up. In the end, he was held down by the people beside him. Although his guess was indeed possible, his words were too harsh. It was normal to be slapped in the face. He couldn't blame her for having a bad temper. After Xiaoqing finished scolding, she sat down. Her face was cold. She said, "If you have any doubts, you can speak. I'm a democratic person. You can speak your mind." Then no one spoke. She was democratic. They really couldn't tell. Now was the time to ask her for help. No matter what, they couldn't defend her. "If no one has any objections, I'll continue. After my people found out that the source of the poison was in the water, they did a detailed investigation. The reason why I called everyone here is to explain this matter clearly to everyone. Then, each of you can contribute to find the source of the poison. Once the matter is resolved, everyone will be happy. To put it bluntly, this poison incident didn't affect Jiangcheng. I can ignore it. However, I'll take care of this matter because I don't want trouble in the future. If any of you have opinions about me, it's okay. Just hold it in. If you want to throw a tantrum, don't do it in front of me. Otherwise, don't blame me when you die, Xiaoqing said coldly. My words aren't nice to hear. You can put up with it. If you don't, it's okay. Anyway, this is my territory. All the base chiefs and higher-ups were speechless. If anyone has any opinions, you can speak up. After all, we're going to cooperate soon. Xiaoqing said lazily. Don't cause trouble and hold me back when we start cooperating. If you didn't know that I have a bad temper in the past, you should know now. When the time comes, I won't be polite to anyone who causes trouble or holds me back. Someone immediately said, if each of us sends a few people, will it be like the Qian family, where there are many leaders? Or will we choose one leader to lead everyone? We have to clarify this matter. Otherwise, no one will feel at ease. Xiaoqing was a little impatient. This was the biggest problem when working with this group of people. Their hearts and minds were always filled with power. Everything else had to be pushed to the back of their minds. I didn't say that we're going to cooperate with you to settle this matter. What I mean is that each family should send a few people to investigate separately. If we investigate together, it won't be a problem. No one needs to care about each other. Anyway, it's not like we're going out to fight. If we have to find a leader to investigate something, it's annoying. Xiaoqing said coldly. If we find a leader, we'll probably have to negotiate for a few days. By then, the person who did this in the dark would have destroyed all the evidence. Why would we need to wait for you to investigate? That person's face was a little red. He muttered a few words, but didn't say anything else. If no one has any more questions, this matter is settled. Each of you will send a few people and organize a few teams to investigate separately. Find out the source and the problem. Figure it out and solve this matter. It will be good for you, good for me, and good for him. Xiaoqing said lightly. Yan Pingshan was the first to express his support. I think Castellan Xiao is right. Everyone, don't guess who the person who poisoned is. When the source is found and the matter is solved, it won't be too late to study this. After all, our biggest problem now is that the land is polluted and can't produce food. After solving this biggest problem, the other problems won't be a problem. People agreed one after another. Although they didn't like Xiaoqing very much, they had to admit that this time, it was really thanks to Xiaoqing. Chapter 631. Without Xiaoqing, no one would know that Yin Jiang had been poisoned. They would still have to live without food and water. No one knew what would happen in the future. Although Xiaoqing stood up for them, because she didn't want to be implicated, they would remember this favor. People should be like this. If others were good to you and helped you, no matter what the reason was, at least you should know it in your heart. It was just like if others helped you because of your own problems, shouldn't you be grateful? Those who had such thoughts were mostly evil. People said that good people didn't live long. But who would remember that bad people often had worse endings? In the past, when they had a meeting, it would take at least 10 days to half a month to reach a conclusion. However, after chatting with Xiaoqing, it was settled in a few minutes. They all sighed. No wonder Jiangcheng City could develop so quickly. It was so efficient. After confirming the cooperation, they chatted for a while. In the end, they decided that each family would send 2 teams to search for the source of the poison along Yanjiang. They also sent people to some of the tributaries. For safety and other considerations, they had a total of 8 survivor bases. Including Jiangcheng City and Hope Survivor Base, there were 10 in total. Each base would send 2 teams, so there were 20 teams. The 20 teams were divided into 5 groups. 4 teams were in one group. The team that was in the same group as Xiaoqing was from Yan Pingshan's base, the team from the capital city, and the team from Hope Survivor Base. This team was led by Xiaoqing. In addition, there was another team led by Mulin. They were cooperating with the other bases. Yan Qiyue and the Gu siblings were left in Jiangcheng City. After all, it was their home. They couldn't let others raid it. Each team had 5 to 10 people, but they were all elites. For example, in Xiaoqing's team, there were Xiaoqing, Qin Zishi, Er Dai, Xiaotong, Xiaoyu and a male android. This cyborg was the one who had placed Xiaoyu in his chest. He did not have a name and could not speak. After some time, everyone gave him a name. He was called Little Six because he had 6 fingers. With Yan Hanqing's current strength, he could be ranked in the top 5 in Jiang City. However, he was a low-key person, and not many people knew about him. Hence, he was asked by Xiaoqing to protect Mulin. Xiaoqing was worried because psychic paranormals tended to have weak bodies. However, although she was worried, she was clear about Mulin's strength. Ordinary people would not be able to make things difficult for her. With Yan Hanqing's protection, it would be enough. Xiaoqing's voice was neither loud nor soft, just loud enough for most people to hear. Mulin, when we go out later, I won't be by your side. If anyone dares to bully you, beat them to death. If you can't beat them, call them your brother-in-law. If they die, it's on me. Our family members don't bully the weak, but we can't let others bully us. If your brother-in-law can't beat them, come back and call me. I'll beat them back even if I don't do it. Even if you beat them, I'll beat them to death. The surrounding people all lowered their heads. They were afraid that the corners of their mouths were twitching so badly that people would think that there was something wrong with their faces. Moreover, they all sighed in their hearts. They had never seen such a protective person. It was simply terrifying. They decided that when they went back, they would tell everyone in the base that in the future, when they went out to bully people, they had to first ask if the other party was from Jiangcheng. Otherwise, they would not know what was going on if the other party came to their doorstep. Not to mention other things, this person from Jiangcheng was first class in her ability to protect people. Chapter 632. After the teams were divided, it was time to set off. Each team would be responsible for one branch. They would follow the branch river to check out the branch. The rest of Yanjiang would be left to Xiaoqing's team. Therefore, when they reached a certain place, they would have to split up. Xiaoqing led the rest of the team in the direction of Yanjiang. Xiaoqing's team's survival in the wild had shocked many people, and this time was no exception. Before lunch, each person had a glass of milk, 4 dishes and a soup. After lunch there were desserts. A group of people who were eating dry food stared at them in a daze. They had never seen such a comfortable life in the wild. They did not know that Xiaoqing's team had skipped the afternoon nap, because they had something important to do. Mengshen's team was much happier. They could go over to eat. After lunch, they officially arrived at Yanjiang. Yanjiang was very long and wide. Zombies did not like places with a lot of water, so they did not encounter any zombies along the way. Of course, there were Er Dai, Xiaoyu and Xiaoqing here. There were not many zombies who would dare to offend them. Therefore, they didn't encounter any danger along the way. They smoothly finished the first half of the exploration, but they didn't find anything. If we continue forward, we will reach the source of Yanjiang. Can we really find the place where the poison was used? Someone could not help but doubt. The poison should have melted when it entered the water. Even if someone poisoned us, how would we know what kind of poison they used, and where they used it? Yeah, the poison must have melted into the water. Wouldn't our efforts be in vain? Another person said. Xiaoqing could not help but roll her eyes. Then she said, the poison has spread throughout Yanjiang, including several major rivers. It has almost poisoned the entire Celestial Empire. The poison has not weakened until today. Tell me, what kind of poison can melt when it enters the water? Can it exist in living water? Can it reproduce on its own? I know that some of you are stupid, but I didn't know that you are that stupid. Yanjiang is not a pool of stagnant water. Once you put poison in, the poison will remain. Yanjiang is a living water. New water will replace the old. Then there must be a place that is the source of the poison. If you still don't understand what I'm saying, then go back to where you came from. Xiaoqing realized that when she was with this group of idiots, she couldn't help but become a sharp-tongued boy. He really didn't know how these people managed to support those bases. Could it be that a group of brainless people ruled over another group of brainless people? It's just that he hasn't figured it out yet. Someone muttered softly, "Don't say it out loud. It's embarrassing. Even if you don't feel ashamed, your boss will feel ashamed." It's a miracle that the base hasn't closed down after using someone like you as a senior. Xiaoqing sneered and said. No one said a word. No one wanted to bump into her. She was already spewing poison from her mouth. If they bumped into her, they would probably be bitten to death. Thus the group set off again. When they were about to reach the source of the Yin River, they finally encountered an obstacle. The person who came to stop them was the woman who was hugging the skull from last time. Beside her was a huge snake that was at least 10 meters long. It had a human head and half a human body. If that was all, it would be fine. At most, it would look like a snake with a human head. But this one was different. It had a snake head. On top of the snake's head, there was half a human body. It looked like she had taken root in the snake's brain. Chapter 633. Half of the person's face was covered in scales, so they couldn't tell what it looked like. Its tongue was also forked just like a snake. Even its eyes were vertical. Behind it was a mess of high-level zombies and mutated animals. All of them had been modified. Xiaoyu and Xiaolu were enraged when they saw this scene. There were only two things that they hated the most in their lives. The first was when someone hurt Jiangqing, Yingyi, and Xiaoqing. The second was when someone experimented on human bodies. Because they were the victims of human experiments, they could only be half human, half ghost monsters for the rest of their lives, because of the injuries they suffered. When they saw others like them, they were even angrier. The two of them simply wanted to pounce forward, destroy these test subjects first, and then kill the mastermind behind the scenes. Why is it you losers again? Xiaoqing said lazily. Is there no one else on your side? What's the point of sending you out again and again? The woman hugged the skull and looked very wronged. The person on the snake's head said, Don't talk nonsense. Let's see what's really going on. The truth is clear. You're right. Xiaoqing sneered and said, Xiaoyu, Xiaolu, tear it apart. Let me see what's under this person's head. Xiaolu and Xiaoyu, who were eager to fight, pounced forward. The thing with a human head and a snake's body was obviously very confident in itself. It raised its hand to stop the woman from helping it and swam out by itself. Xiaolu didn't have any special abilities, but he was very strong and his body was exceptionally tough. Before he was modified, he was a water ability user. His ability was very weak. Even after he was modified, he wasn't very strong. However, Xiaoyu liked him, and the two of them had a good relationship. After Yinya's second modification, Xiaolu became a human tank, responsible for protecting Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu's body was very weak, but he was a spiritual type. After Xiaolu, the two of them relied on each other, and their combat power soared. Little Six stepped forward and Little Fish, who was lying in his chest, came out. He opened his mouth and revealed a mouthful of sharp teeth. The sharp teeth looked terrifying, but they were not for attacking. The key was the invisible sound waves he emitted. The formless sound waves, combined with the mental attack, caused the human head to scream in pain. The snake tail immediately swung, like a steel club, sweeping across. Little Six's feet didn't move an inch. He stood there and patted his chest. When the snake's tail hit him, it didn't even leave a white mark. It only caused the surrounding ground to collapse. His defense was absolutely frighteningly high. Ordinary people would not be able to break through his defense. Even Xiaoqing would find it difficult to break through his defense. Not to mention this stupid snake. Xiaoyu constantly changed his sound wave attack, mixed in with his mental attack. In the beginning, he emitted an invisible sound wave attack. People could only see him open his mouth, and there was a transparent wave-like thing spreading out. Wherever it spread, even the air there would solidify, as if the space would collapse in the next second. Later on, Xiaoyu changed his attack. He only revealed his head from Xiaolu's chest, and emitted a sound that wasn't sharp. It was a little strange, but it was very pleasant to the ears. People who didn't know better would think that he was singing. The sound was like a real song, from a gentle to a climax, layer by layer. The scales on the snake's tail looked like they had been cut off by a knife, revealing the red flesh underneath. The snake was in so much pain that it rolled on the ground. Little Six approached step by step. Even if the snake was in pain and randomly swung its tail, hitting rocks and sending dirt flying, it didn't affect Little Six at all. The closer he got, the greater the effect of Xiaoyu's sound wave. Although Xiaoyu was small, he was very smart. He separated his sound wave attack from his mental attack, because he could see that the thing controlling the snake's body was not the snake's head, but the human head above. His mental attack was specifically targeted at the human head, and his sound wave attack was targeted at the snake below. With both of them working together, the effect was very fast. The pitiful snake quickly lost most of its scales. Its body was covered in blood, like a skinned woman, rolling around on the ground. The woman holding the skull wanted to save the snake, but she was stopped by Xiaoqing. The vines seemed to be alive as they blocked in front of her. Xiaoqing said lazily, "If you want to go up and help, it's okay. We will have one more person on our side. What do you think of me?" Chapter 634. The woman who was holding the skull immediately became obedient. She would dare to try fighting other people, but against Xiaoqing, she would have to look at the time and place. Therefore, she could only watch as the snake woman was killed by Xiaoyu. In fact, she did not want to fight against Xiaoqing at all. Xiaoqing's strength was too terrifying. She was no match for him at all. However, the key was that the higher-ups had given the order. Even if she did not want to, she had to do it. As soon as the snake woman died, she knew that she could not delay any longer. She immediately gave the order to attack. All the zombies and mutated animals rushed forward. Some people were stunned. They were a little flustered when they resisted. After all, these strange creatures only appeared in movies, TV shows, or stories. Even during the apocalypse, they had never seen such strange creatures. Moreover, from the tone of the voice, these things were the results of human experiments. After the apocalypse, human experiments were strictly prohibited. It wasn't just the capital that had issued a notice prohibiting human experimentation. Other bases had also strongly prohibited human experimentation. Therefore, after the apocalypse, these things were generally not seen. However, this time they saw a bunch of them. It seemed that none of them were weak. "What are you all standing there for?" Xiaoqing was angry. He wanted to give each of them a whip. What time was it now? How could they still be in a daze? It was a miracle that these survivors' bases in China still existed. Could it be that in the past 2 years, the bosses were all brainless? It was also a miracle that an idiot boss and a group of brainless higher-ups could not close down the base. After Xiaoqing shouted, they came back to their senses and took up their weapons to resist. Although the woman who was holding the skull had more people, their strength was still not enough, especially when compared to Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing easily killed the zombies and mutated animals. At this time, a man suddenly appeared from the sky. He stood on the back of a large spider. His back was slightly bent, and he looked like a wolf, tiger, or leopard that was ready to attack. The moment he appeared, Xiaoqing felt her hair stand on end, as if she was being targeted by a wild beast. A ball of tender green vines suddenly appeared in front of her, forming a shield. A sharp spider leg, like a spear, pierced deeply into the vines. Fortunately, the vine shield was thick and solid, and the spider leg only managed to pierce a small part of it before it got stuck and stopped moving. Xiaoqing looked at the man standing on the spider's back. His face was covered by a mask, so she couldn't see his face clearly. The only thing she could see was his pair of green eyes. His pupils were like those of a cat, and they carried a wild and deep aura of death. After the man showed up, the woman who was holding the skull quickly moved behind him. She lowered her head with respect and fear. The man's voice was very hoarse. "Trash." Xiaoqing inexplicably felt that this voice was a little familiar, but she really couldn't remember where she had heard this voice. Xiaoqing could only look at the man carefully. The man's arms were very long, almost reaching his knees. His black nails were long, and looked very dangerous. Except for that, he did not expose much of his body. Xiaoqing could not tell who he was. The man's voice was still hoarse. "No wonder you are a level 7 zombie king. My men are no match for you. See you later. I hope that when we meet next time, you will be stronger than you are now." Seeing that he was about to leave, Xiaoqing threw out the dagger in her hand without saying a word. The huge spider leaped into the air, revealing a pale human face. The eyes on the face suddenly opened, and a beam of light shot out from the white eyes. The dagger melted as soon as it touched the light. Chapter 635. The man retreated with his men like a tide. He really came and left in a hurry. Did he come just to take a look? Xiao Qing was almost certain that this man was the one behind all this. Or at least one of them. His strength was not weaker than hers. If there were other people as strong as him, it would be a nightmare for her. The short exchange between the two of them caused many people's faces to turn pale, because they discovered that the instant Xiao Qing and this man's aura clashed was enough to make them unable to breathe. This was only the aura. What if these two people made a move on them? The man revealed something even more terrifying. He said that Xiao Qing was a level 7 zombie king. Level 7, the strongest paranormal that had ever appeared among humans, was only at level 6. There were only a few level 6 superpowered human beings, but there was already a level 7 zombie king. That man should not be an ordinary person. Since he could fight against Xiao Qing, he should be at least at level 7. The sense of crisis was so oppressive that their backs were about to bend. Some people couldn't help but wonder if they should secretly think of a way to kill Xiao Qing first. A level 7 zombie king. She was very likely to be the first level 9 zombie emperor in the world. No one knew if Xiao Qing had the idea to attack all human beings, but what if? What if she really attacked human beings? How many people could resist her? Probably not even one. Not to mention the vigilance in everyone's hearts. After the group of people blocked the way for a while, no one else blocked their way. They successfully reached the source of Yin River, and finally understood why the poison in the water did not dissipate. At the source of Yin River, there were corpses everywhere. They were all strange-looking corpses, which looked like zombies. Their bodies were full of large and small pustules. Once the pustules burst, black water would flow out. The corpses were floating in the water at the source, which contained a lot of corpse poison. As long as there was fresh water, it would be quickly contaminated. Everyone was stunned because there were just too many corpses. They were densely packed, and just looking at them made one's hair stand on end. There were at least 100 floating corpses. Xiao Qing closed her eyes and let out a long sigh. She suppressed the discomfort in her heart and said, "Let's salvage a few bodies for research." Then she used the vines to fish out some corpses. These corpses had been soaked in the water for a long time, and had become pale and bloated. However, one could still see the fear on their faces. There were researchers among the people who came with them. They went forward to do a simple examination of the corpses, and were all stunned. Meng Shen calmed himself down and reported, "After the examination, we found that these people should have been normal people when they were alive. Then they were forced to become poison corpses. After they were killed, they were placed here, not zombies. Behind that man, there must be a researcher, or a team conducting live experiments." Xiao Qing said expressionlessly. In the post-apocalyptic world, hundreds of people disappearing would not attract any attention. Therefore, we do not know how many people they killed or captured to conduct live experiments. Meng Shen could not help but say, "Such a cruel thing. Is it really something that humans can do? You are looking down on people," Xiao Qing said coldly. "Some people are even more terrifying than zombies. Alright, the first thing we need to do now is to salvage all the corpses and clean up the source. We need to restore the water source, so that it will not pollute our land. As for other things, we will go back and have a meeting to discuss." No wonder that group of people did not move the corpses. There were too many of them. And if they really wanted to move them, Xiao Qing and the others might come before they could finish. They might as well give up on hiding the source of the poison. There were too many corpses, and some of them were highly decomposed. Once they were salvaged, the arms and legs would fall off. That would not work. Even if there were only some broken limbs in the river, they would still act as a source of pollution and continue to pollute the river. In that case, there was no point in cleaning up the poison. Xiao Qing carefully directed the people to salvage the corpses. Even though they had a lot of people, it took almost an entire day to salvage all the corpses. The remaining problem was even bigger, because there were still some broken pieces of the corpses. These pieces were small in size, but they contained a lot of poison. If they could not salvage all of them, Yanjiang's river would be filled with poison for a long time in the future. Xiaoqing, Air Dai, Xiao Lu and Xiao Yu cleaned up and went into the water directly. The four of them were the least afraid of corpse poison, because they were zombies who had seen zombies that were afraid of corpse poison. Xiao Yu was responsible for using her spirit power to search for the remaining pieces of the corpses. After finding them, the other three people used nets to fish out the pieces of the corpses. This should be the most thankless job, as it was troublesome and tiring. Unfortunately, except for the four of them, it was inconvenient for the others to go into the water. Although the corpses had been moved out, the poison in Yanjiang's river had increased instead of decreasing. After all, during the process of salvaging the corpses, a lot of the poison had flowed out, and it would be very serious for a short period of time. Even the superpowered people who were not infected by corpse poison did not dare to go into the water. They just waited by the shore. As long as Xiaoqing and the others salvaged the pieces of the corpses, the others would put the pieces together with the corpses. In the end, they would burn the pieces, and everything would be fine. Everyone's heart was heavy as they watched Xiaoqing and the others salvage most of the pieces of the corpses. Even if the corpses were burned, the poison would not be completely removed in a short period of time. Especially the poison in the soil. It was not easy to clean it up. It had to be done step by step. The most important thing was that the people who were still guarding against Xiaoqing found out that they might soon ask for help from Xiaoqing. Chapter 636. The source of the poison had been removed, and the remaining toxins would slowly disperse until they returned to their original state. That would be the problem. It would take at least 3 to 5 months for the toxins to be removed. In other words, they would still have no food to eat during these 3 to 5 months. Even if the toxins were completely removed, the crops would still have to be planted and ripened before they could be eaten. So, what should they do before the toxins were removed and the crops ripened? The food they had now was definitely not enough to support them until the crops ripened. At least, it was impossible for all the bases to support them. So, the problem was that there was a big grain and vegetable grower here. Everyone looked at Xiaoqing differently. No matter what, at least for now, they didn't dare to offend Xiaoqing, because they might need to go to Jiang City to buy some vegetables and grains. If Xiaoqing didn't sell them, what could they do? They couldn't beat her, so should they kneel down and beg? Therefore, they had to build a good relationship with her. Some of the people who had refuted Xiaoqing at the meeting regretted it now. Why did they have such a bad mouth? Retribution had come. I think we need to leave some people to be stationed near the source of Yin River to prevent any more accidents. Xiaoqing breathed a sigh of relief and said lightly, although the process wasn't satisfactory, at least the problem was solved. The crisis in Jiang City was also solved. Naturally, she didn't know that there was a big problem on the other side. Jiang City, don't panic. Paranormals above level 4, follow me. Gu Ponpon's eyes were red. She led the first group of paranormals and rushed into the battlefield. Gu Chuan's eyes were filled with anger. He went to find Yinyi first. In Jiang City, there were only 2 people who could command the zombies. One was Xiaoqing, and the other was Yinyi. Now that Xiaoqing wasn't here, he could only find Yinyi. Gu Ponpon's eyes were bloodshot. She had never liked anyone in her life. She had only liked one man, and this man had betrayed her. In the end, Gu Panpan found out that he was just plotting something. He just wanted to sneak into Jiang City. At the critical moment, he even opened the gates of Jiang City. That's right. How could there be so many men in the world like Xiaoqing's men, who poured all their sincerity and affection on a woman? While the fight was going on, a man quietly entered Xiaoqing's residence. He was wearing a thick cloak that covered his entire body. Not to mention his face, even his hair was not exposed. The man walked around the house and went straight to the back garden. At this time, there were only 2 people in the garden. One was Xiao Bao, and the other was the female zombie called Xiao Huahua. The 2 of them were playing games in the garden. Xiao Bao was very sensitive. He looked up and his pale eyes moved. Who are you? The man lowered his head and sniffed. Xiao Bao could only see his teeth under the cloak. They were pale and ferocious. Huahua walked over quietly and protected Xiao Bao. At this time, the man suddenly stretched out an arm covered with scales. The sharp nails looked like knives, stabbing towards Xiao Bao. Huahua blocked it immediately. Her body liquefied in an instant. The moment the arm went through her body, the liquefied body turned solid again. The arm was locked in her body. Chapter 637. Huahua reached out and grabbed the arm tightly. She bared her sharp teeth and glared fiercely at the man, not letting him hurt her friend. In the beginning, Huahua didn't like Little Bun because she was afraid of him. But after spending more time with him, Huahua slowly grew to like him. Her friends would leave her delicious food and play with her. In Jiang City, she didn't have to worry about a group of people yelling at her to kill her wherever she went. There were also kind aunties who would feed her. She had a bottle of medicinal powder in her pocket, which Little Bun had given her. She could taste ordinary food with just a little powder. Such a Little Bun and such a Jiang City made her, who was ignorant, want to protect it for the first time. The arm in her body suddenly swelled up, and the scales on it stood up and pierced into Floey's flesh. Floey couldn't liquefy again, because once it liquefy, she wouldn't be able to trap this person, and this person would definitely harm her little friend. A current flowed from the arm into Huahua's body, making her shiver. Taking advantage of this, the man waved his arm and flung Huahua away. The whole arm was pulled out of Huahua's body, leaving a big hole. Little Bun was furious. His friend was bullied, but Little Bun's only ability was to devour. He hadn't reached the stage where he could devour from a distance. He could only use his ability when he came into contact with the other party. But the man didn't give Little Bun a chance to touch him. He raised his hand, and a current of air slapped Little Bun away. After sending Little Bun flying, he walked step by step to the center of the garden. There was a plant there that looked like a beating heart. The heart was close to maturity, and the power it contained was enough for an ability user to directly break through to the 9th level. Of course, zombies were the same. Seeing the man bend down as if to pluck the heart, Little Bun became anxious. That was his mama's. His mama wanted to use it. Mama said that it was very important. No matter what, it couldn't be taken away by others. Little Bun panicked and scurried over. Like a little mouse, he lay on the heart. His soft little claws suddenly stretched out and pierced into the heart. Devour ability, activate. That person was also anxious. His purpose for coming this time was to obtain this heart. It could even be said that they had spent so much time and effort to deploy their forces just for this thing. If all his efforts went to waste, he wouldn't have a good time when he returned. But just as he was about to kill Little Bun and take the heart, Floey jumped over and wrapped around him. Floey turned into a ball of liquid and wrapped around him, making him unable to move for a short period of time. The two of them cooperated very well. One was responsible for trapping the mysterious man, while the other was responsible for devouring the heart. To put it bluntly, they would rather eat it on the spot than give it to you. By the time that person dispersed Floey's liquid and sent Little Bun flying, there was less than half a heart left. At most, it was 1/3 of its original size. That person was so angry that he wanted to take Little Bun back with him. At this moment, Yen Chiyue, who had been doing experiments upstairs, came down with full concentration. He jumped in fright and quickly set up an air barrier to protect Little Bun. That person saw that reinforcements had arrived and knew that he would not be able to succeed. If he continued to fight, he might not even be able to take away the heart that he had already obtained. He gritted his teeth and ran away. Yen Chiyue quickly went downstairs and helped Little Bun up. Floey on the other side was more miserable. Her body had been scattered once, leaving only a pool of liquid on the ground. She was trying her best to gather herself into a ball. Otherwise, once she returned to her human form, she would become a pile of minced meat. Yen Chiyue couldn't help her. The only thing he could do was call people over to guard the surroundings. Little Bun's condition was not right. His body was boiling hot, like a small fireball. Zombies didn't have much water on their bodies, but Little Bun's body kept leaking water. At first it was just sweat, but later on, it became a small waterfall. Yan Qiyu was very anxious. After all, little Bun was his son. Of course, that wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that if something happened to little Bun, wouldn't Xiaoqing die? Xiaoqing would definitely go crazy. Lock down the back garden immediately. Tell Gu Chuan to send another team over. Yan Qiyu carried little Bun and went upstairs. He didn't even care about the heart. The most important thing now is little Bun. Little Bun was the most important person in the world. No matter what, he couldn't let anything happen to little Bun. Xiaoqing was still unaware that her base had been raided. She was on her way back with her men. After the people in charge of each base had gathered, they came up with a new plan. A few people were left behind to guard the source of Yanjiang. Only when the poison had dissipated, and there were no problems with the soil would they slowly retreat. Because of various reasons, the meeting was held very quickly. The decision was also made very quickly. In a few minutes, even the people who were left to guard the base had been chosen. Xiaoqing left little Yu and little Six here for the time being. With the two of them working together, they could be said to be invincible in Eternal Heaven Empire. Even if they couldn't defeat them, it didn't matter. After all, no one could stop them. Escaping would be easy. At the end, Xiaoqing reminded them several times that no matter what, they shouldn't get into a conflict with others. If others bullied them, they didn't have to be soft-hearted. They could just kill them directly. The others were very helpless. It wasn't as if they hadn't seen how fierce these two people were. As long as they weren't stupid, they wouldn't bump into them. Everyone knew that the boss of Rivertown was obsessed with protecting people. They also had something to ask of Xiaoqing. Only idiots would offend little Six and the others. After everything was arranged, the matter came to an end. In order to show their friendliness, the few bosses took the initiative to visit Rivertown. They probably wanted to see if they could bring back 2 carts of vegetables or something. If it really didn't work out, the deal wouldn't work out. At least they were still benevolent. When Xiaoqing went, there weren't many people. When she returned, there was a group of people following behind her. In the end, she didn't expect to see a scene at the entrance of Rivertown, as if a big battle had just ended. Gu Panpan walked out from inside and knelt in front of her with a thud. Chapter 638. Get up, Xiaoqing said expressionlessly. Gu Panpan knelt down stubbornly. Tears were coming out of her eyes. She straightened her neck and knelt there, trying hard not to sound like she was crying miserably. Sister Qing, I'm sorry. It's my fault. I asked you to get up. Now I'm giving you 2 choices. First, pack up your things and leave Jiangqing City. Jiangqing City doesn't need such a coward. Second, stand up and straighten your back. Then tell me the whole story. Even if it's really your fault, so what? Kneeling down and apologizing is not enough. I just need you to make up for it. Don't just apologize here, Xiaoqing said coldly. Gu Panpan stood up and followed Xiaoqing obediently. When they returned to the residence, Xiaoqing sat on the sofa and said, Tell me, what happened? Sister Qing, I met a guy before. I liked him very much. I wanted to bring him home to meet you, but I didn't have the chance. Just yesterday he came but you weren't around. I wanted to let him stay in Jiangqing City for a few days and wait for you to come back. But I didn't expect that he would open the gate of Jiangqing City in the wee hours of this morning and lead the enemy in. Gu Panpan's eyes and nose turned red. She felt terrible. It was the first time she liked someone, but it turned out to be a complete scam. She thought she could be strong, but after seeing Xiaoqing, she couldn't help but cry. It's my fault. I trusted him. Jiangqing City almost. The baby was hurt too. Gu Panpan stretched her face out and said, Sister Qing hit me. I'll feel better if you hit me. Xiaoqing's expression changed. What's wrong with the baby? Ah Qing, come with me and have a look. Yan Qiyu walked down the stairs and said. Xiaoqing didn't care about anything else. She jumped up the stairs and followed Yan Qiyu into the room. Little Bun was lying on the bed with nothing on his body. His entire body was bright red, just like a lobster that had just come out of the pot. What was even more terrifying was that this lobster's body was covered in dense cracks. Blood seeped out from the cracks and mixed with sweat, drenching the bedsheets beneath him. Little Bun's physique was close to that of a zombie's, and he had very little blood in his body. Moreover, he was still a child. He must have bled out all of his blood to wet the bedsheets. Xiao Qing's legs went soft at that time. She had never been so scared before. Her baby, her little Xiaozi, was lying on the bed just like that. She did not know if he was dead or alive. She did not even know if he would wake up again. What exactly happened? Xiao Qing supported herself against the wall. She almost bit through her own lips. Yin Qiyu calmly told her what had happened. It's like this. The other party might have come for that thing. The baby was stupid and swallowed almost 2/3 of the energy. There is too much energy now, and he can't digest it all. The only reason why he could maintain his current condition and not explode is because he has broken through to level 5 previously. His body is tougher. Xiao Qing quickly calmed down and asked, "Did you catch him?" I realized that something was wrong. When I came down, I only had time to protect the baby. That person ran away when he saw that the situation was not good, Yin Qiyu said. He felt very guilty. If he had not been addicted to his research, he would have realized that something was wrong and come down to take a look. Then, little Bun would not have gotten into this accident. Xiao Qing could tell that Yin Qiyu was upset, so she said calmly, "It has nothing to do with you. We were too careless. I always thought that the other party's poisoning was a plot against Jiang City, but it was just to attack Jiang City. I never thought that their target was the thing that I brought back. No one would have thought that this was a good diversion. Even I was fooled. The most important thing now is to think of a way to save Xiao Qiyu. The other party is very shrewd and scheming. Who knows if there will be another plot against us brewing in the dark." Chapter 639. Once bitten, twice shy. We still have a chance before we reach the point where we can't take it back. Mulin walked in. She was still heartbroken. She didn't have any children, so she treated little Bun as her own. Now she was so sad that she was about to cry. "I'll think of a way. The energy in the baby's body can only be cleared, but not digested. After all, the amount is too large. It's enough for a person to reach level 9. Let me see if I can find a way to share the energy in his body with everyone. This way, the disadvantages can become advantages," Yin Qiyu said through gritted teeth. "Take care of yourself. If you're too busy, I'll go crazy," Xiao Qing said calmly. "Don't worry. I still want to spend the rest of my life with you." Yin Qiyu leaned over and kissed Xiao Qing. Then she said, "The baby will be fine. Don't worry too much." Xiao Qing nodded. She couldn't help but gently hold little Bun's hand. She didn't dare to use too much strength. She only felt that little Bun was like a glass product full of cracks. A gentle touch would break him. Xiao Qing stayed in the room for a long time. After all, she was no longer the Xiao Qing of the past. She was now the city lord. There were many things waiting for her to solve outside. Even if she wanted to stay in the room willfully to accompany her son, she had to consider the people in the city. When Xiao Qing came out of the room, everyone who saw her felt that she was very tired. However, there were still things that needed to be done. For example, if Gu Pompon's matter wasn't resolved quickly, it wouldn't only affect Gu Pampan. Jiang City would also be affected. After leaving little Bun's room, Xiao Qing and Gu Pampan sat down opposite each other. "Everyone else, please leave first. Let me have a good chat with Pampan." Mulin was a little worried. She whispered, "Qing, you're not in a good state now. Do you want to rest first?" Xiao Qing shook her head. "I know my own situation. I can't hold on anymore. Even if you don't tell me, I'll go and rest. After all, I still have you. How can I collapse?" "It's good that you know. I'll go out first." Mulin suppressed the worry in his heart and walked out, closing the door behind him. Gu Pampan sat there obediently, like a child who had done something wrong, waiting for the judgment of the elders. Xiao Qing said calmly, "This matter is not entirely your fault. I am also at fault. I underestimated the other party, which led to the current situation." Gu Pampan shook her head and whispered, "Sister Qing, you didn't do anything wrong. You're not a deity, so how could you know everyone's plans? I'm the one at fault here. I didn't see things clearly. Wasn't I mistaken? Xiao Qing touched Gu Pampan's head. Do you know why I want to talk to you alone? Gu Pampan shook her head. She did something wrong, but Xiao Qing didn't blame her. Instead, she put all the blame on herself, which made Gu Pampan feel even worse. Why did Xiao Qing have to take the blame for her mistake? Why did Xiao Qing have to clean up after her mess? It was always like this. She was always the one who implicated Xiao Qing. She felt very sad. She used to think that she had grown up and was an adult who could share Xiao Qing's burden. But in the end, she was still the one who dragged her down. This is your first love, right? I don't care about the attack on Jiang City. If Jiang City is gone, I can just build another one. As long as you are all still here. What do I have to be afraid of? What I'm afraid of is that you'll be prejudiced against all men, because of what happened this time. There are indeed bad men in this world, but there are also good men. Don't reject all men just because of one experience. Although it's said that women can live well without relying on men, a life without love always seems to be lacking something. Xiao Qing smiled and said, Look at Dai, look at Yin Hanqing, and look at Yin Qiyue. Aren't they very good men? Chapter 640. Xiao Qing squeezed Gu Pampan's hand and said, A woman is bound to meet a few scumbags in her life. Don't be prejudiced against all men, just because of one scumbag. I hope you can live a good life in the future and be happy. Pampan, let bygones be bygones. Just be more careful in the future, but don't be too sad. After all, we didn't lose anything, right? Gu Pampan couldn't stop her tears from flowing out. In the end, she burst into tears and hugged Xiao Qing, refusing to let go. When she was very young, her parents had passed away in a car accident. Her relatives had all coveted her family's insurance and compensation money. Fortunately, she had an aunt who treated them well. However, her uncle didn't like them and kept trying to take money from them. When her brother was 18 years old, he took her out, and the two of them depended on each other. Gu Pampan had never experienced the feeling of motherly love. The elder brother was like a father, and the elder sister was like a mother. If Gu Chuan played the role of a father in her life, then Xiao Qing played the role of a mother in her life. Gu Pampan cried like a child. There wouldn't be a third person in this life who would only worry about whether she would get hurt after she got into trouble. Don't cry. Everything will be fine. Xiao Qing patted Gu Pampan's back. She felt a little tired. She didn't like the current days. Every day, she had to move forward with conspiracies and calculations. She was like a hedgehog. Under her soft belly, she protected the people she wanted to protect, and then raised the sharp thorns to the outside world. There were knives, guns, and swords outside. There was a rain of bullets aimed at them. Even if she was tired, she couldn't say it because there were too many people under her wings. If she fell, what would happen to the people she cared about? Gu Pampan cried for a long time. Finally, she said, What saddens me the most is not that I was betrayed, but that little Xiao was hurt. Sister Qing, you trusted me, and let me and my brother guard the city. But I didn't manage to do it, and the baby will be fine. He won't blame you. What you need to do now is to wash your face and lead everyone to set up a defense. Don't let something like this happen again. Xiao Qing rubbed her red nose and said, Even the tip of your nose is red from crying. You're so ugly. Only then did Gu Pampan pout coquettishly before saying, Sister Qing, trust me one more time. In the future, I definitely won't disappoint you. Xiao Qing said softly, Yes, I trust you. Although Gu Pampan's personality was a little naive, she wasn't stupid. On the contrary, she was actually very smart. It was just that she hadn't realized it yet. After Gu Pampan left, Xiao Qing called in some of her companions. Then, she handed over all the work to them. She left Jiangqing to Gu Chuan for the time being. Then, she went into Little Bun's room, and didn't come out again. She was the city lord, but at the same time, she was also a mother. She had fulfilled her responsibilities as the city lord, but she also had to fulfill her responsibilities as a mother. For the next 2 days, Xiao Qing didn't come out of her room. For 2 days and 2 nights, she kept her eyes open and looked at Little Bun seriously. She had neglected Little Bun for a long time. If she wasn't going out to sea, she was running around outside. The time she spent with Little Bun could be counted on one hand. Little Bun never complained about his grievances. He was very, very obedient. He didn't cause trouble or complain. When the adults at home were busy, he could sit alone in the garden and play with the sand for the whole day. Sometimes he would be lonely. Sometimes he would be sad. Sometimes he would miss Xiaoqing. But Little Bun didn't say anything. The only thing he did was to stick to Xiaoqing when she came home until she left again. Chapter 641. At the thought of this, Xiaoqing's heart was so sour that it crumpled into a ball. What had she done? Wasn't her initial thought to protect the people closest to her? She wanted them to be happy. Why didn't she do that in the end? Baby, wake up soon, okay? Mommy knows she was wrong. Mommy won't neglect you anymore. I'll take you with me wherever I go, okay? Xiaoqing lay on the edge of the bed and put her cheek in the Little Bun's palm. The Little Bun's palm was very hot, like a small stove. In the past, she hoped that Little Bun's body temperature would rise a little. Now, she would rather Little Bun be half human and half zombie for the rest of his life than let anything happen to him. Little Bun was her lifeblood. He was a piece of meat that fell out of her stomach. She had been pregnant for 10 months and felt Little Bun grow in her stomach bit by bit. Even if something happened to her, she didn't want anything to happen to Little Bun. Yin Chiyue couldn't find a solution, but she found a way to suppress Little Bun's current condition and prevent it from worsening. On the 4th day, Little Bun woke up for a short while. He wrinkled his red nose and looked a little confused. Mommy, baby hurts. Little Bun then shook his head. It doesn't hurt. Baby doesn't hurt at all. Xiaoqing felt that she was going to cry. She didn't know if she should be happy or sad that she was a zombie. Zombies didn't have tears. No matter how painful or sad she was, she couldn't shed a single tear. If it hurts, tell Mommy. It won't hurt anymore after I blow. Xiaoqing held Little Bun's hand gently and said softly. Little Bun would only cry out in pain when he was unconscious. As long as he was conscious, he would never cry out in pain. Little Bun knew that crying out in pain would only make Xiaoqing worry. He didn't want Xiaoqing to worry, so even if it hurt a lot, he would only laugh. The more obedient he was, the more Xiaoqing's heart ached. She wished that the one lying here was her, and not Little Bun. Little Bun was a strong child. When he was sober, even though his eyes were red from the pain, he still deliberately tried to make Xiaoqing happy. He wanted to make Xiaoqing happy. The mother and daughter were very much like each other. The bitterness in their hearts and the tiredness in their hearts were all swallowed down. What was exposed on the outside was sweetness. Mama, when Bao Bao recovers, can we go hiking? I want to go out and play. I want to climb a higher mountain with Mama, okay? Little Baozi didn't even dare to turn his head now. He moved his head slightly and could feel the skin on his neck was about to shatter. When you're better, you can go and see anything. Xiaoqing gritted her teeth. Children were the easiest to coax, but also the hardest to coax. Her Little Bun was especially easy to coax. After a few fairy tales, she waited for Little Bun to fall asleep before she got up and walked outside. A few of her friends had been waiting outside for a long time. When they saw Xiaoqing, they surrounded her. Xiaoqing put a finger to her lips and said softly, "What's going on? When I was inside just now, I heard you calling me. Did something happen?" Mu Lin came over and lowered his voice. "It's like this. During the last meeting we had, some of the bases that explored Yanjiang contacted us. They want to buy some vegetables and food back. Although we have a lot of vegetables and food in our base, it's not for free. Should we sell them or not?" Mu Lin said in a low voice. Mu Lin actually didn't want to sell them. Who asked that group of idiots to target Xiaoqing? Xiaoqing thought for a while and said, "Call the person in charge of finance over." Chapter 642. The person in charge of the finance department was a very young boy. His supernatural ability might be useless in a battle, but when it came to finance, it was as if he had the help of God. His supernatural ability could be summed up in 4 words. Photographic memory, the kind that could read 10 lines at a glance. There were a total of 3 people in the finance department of Jiang City. One was in charge of copying, One was in charge of sundries, and the last one was in charge of everything. Moreover, he was from the Tan family and Xiao Qing's nephew, so he could be trusted. Sister Qing. As soon as Tan Yezi came in, he called her sweetly. He had said before that calling Xiao Qing aunt would make her sound old. She didn't look like an aunt at all. It was more like calling her sister. Xiao Qing, let him be. There will be people coming to do business later. I'll give full authority to you and Mulin. Mulin will support you. Ask for as much as you want. Don't give them face. Xiao Qing sneered and said. Although they had cooperated before, she was still unhappy. Wasn't he very tough at that time? If he had the ability to continue being tough, and let her waste her breath for a long time, then he shouldn't blame her for not being polite. She would make more money for tea. Okay, Sister Qing. Leave it to me. I'll make sure you're satisfied. Tan Yezi patted his chest loudly. When he was in the Tan family, he was in charge of business. It was said that all businessmen were evil. He was very cunning in this aspect. After the matter was handed over, Xiao Qing went to arrange other things at ease. The Qin family and the Tan family had brought countless talents. Now most of the operation of Jiang City depended on the Qin family and the Tan family. This time, the two old men had the biggest reaction when Little Bun was injured. They were so angry that they almost took people out to chase after Little Bun. Fortunately, they were stopped by Gu Chuan. After settling the matters outside, Xiao Qing continued to accompany Little Baozi. The two old men also came to visit Little Baozi frequently. Little Baozi's condition had stabilized, but it was still not good. Seeing the two old men was heartbroken. Yin Qiyue and Yinyi studied it for a long time. In the end, they discovered that there was indeed a way to channel the energy in Little Baozi's body and guide it into another person's body. Firstly, it could save Little Baozi, and secondly, it could increase the strength of the other person. It was simply killing two birds with one stone. But here came the problem. An ordinary person's body wouldn't be able to withstand such violent energy. The reason why Little Bun was fine was because his body was different from the others. However, an ordinary ability user's body wouldn't be able to withstand such violent energy. They were either zombies like Air Dai or Xiao Qing, who were above level 5, or Gu Panpan, who were strength-type paranormals, whose bodies were as strong as zombies. Even Gu Panpan was a little weaker. After all, Gu Panpan didn't have a strong recovery ability like zombies. In this way, many people couldn't participate. Xiao Qing gathered her friends and had a small meeting with the higher-ups. They were going to choose some people to help. Mu Lin directly asked Yin Qiyue, "Is there a way to let our Qing receive the energy first? If her body is saturated, then let others do it." Yin Qiyue nodded. "That's possible. That's good. Let our Qing do it first. To be honest, if the energy is distributed evenly, it may not be as useful as a crystal core. If our Qing absorbs the energy, she may be able to reach level 8. Xiao Qing shook her head. "Let everyone share it. It's better to improve a little. How can I be the only one who can do everything?" Yin Qiyue and the others, as Xiao Qing's family members, were not in a position to comment on such matters. Tan Xiao immediately said, "I also think that Sister Mulin is right. And think about it carefully. The average strength of our river town is very high. What we need are top experts. If your strength increases, you will be a signboard for River Town. It would be best if you could reach level 8. You will probably be the top expert in the country. You can use it as a signboard and intimidate others." Chapter 643. The others agreed. She was right. If the energy was distributed, everyone would only gain a little. It was useless. It was better to gather the energy on one person and create a direct threat to the other bases. You guys are arrogant, right? Our boss can destroy one of your bases by himself. It was frightening to look at. Xiao Qing was helpless. Is it okay for you guys to do this? There's nothing wrong with it. To put it bluntly, it's yours. Logically speaking, the others don't have the right to distribute it. You're already showing respect by asking for our opinion. Mu Lin patted the table and said, "You go first. If you can't handle it, call for Air Dai, Pan Pan, Yin Yi and the others. It's best if you can handle it alone." Everyone agreed. Xiaoqing could only say, I've asked for your opinion. Don't say that I'm a dictator when the time comes. Hurry up and go. The baby can't wait. Mulin pushed her out. Xiaoqing had to prepare. When she went in, little Bun was already asleep. He was lying on the bed and smacking his lips. Xiaoqing had to wake him up and start. Dispersing the energy wasn't as easy as imagined. After all, the energy was too violent. If they weren't careful, they could hurt little Bun. Xiaoqing took off her shoes and sat cross-legged on the bed. She was ready. Qing, do as I said. Let Little Blossom out first, Yin Chuyue said. Xiaoqing let Little Blossom out. This time, Little Blossom was the main force. Little Blossom could absorb human blood and the energy in the human body. However, the latter was more troublesome. Under Yin Chuyue's instructions, Xiaoqing let Little Blossom extend mini tentacles and insert them into Little Bun's body. It looked like a tube. After inserting the tentacles, she let Little Blossom slowly absorb the energy. After purifying it, it would be transferred into Xiaoqing's body. Yin Chuyue had thought of this method at first, but she didn't dare to do it directly. After all, she was going to torture Little Bun's body. What if she accidentally damaged it? This thing was not an experiment. If it did not succeed the first time, he could continue with another test subject. There was only one Little Bun, so he had to be careful. Therefore, he had studied it for a few days. After confirming that the plan was indeed feasible, he told Xiaoqing, be careful. Yin Chuyue was also extremely nervous. After all, the Little Bun was Xiaoqing's life, and Xiaoqing was his life. When Little Blossom absorbed the first wave of energy, Yin Chuyue clapped her hands. It works. Xiaoqing put a finger in front of her lips. Then, she started to absorb Little Flower's power. The power was very pure. As soon as it entered her body, it quickly flowed into the crystal core and became her own power. The energy contained in the heart was indeed the most suitable to be absorbed. After being purified, it was very docile and easy to absorb. Xiaoqing kept absorbing the energy from Little Blossom. Her crystal core was filled up at a speed visible to the naked eye. The energy contained in the heart was enough to create a level 9 superpower possessor. Although it was divided into two parts, and Little Bun only had one part of it, it was still very easy to create 2 or 3 level 8 superpower possessors. After all, there was a huge gap between level 8 and level 9. The energy needed to go from level 8 to level 9 was enough for several people to go from level 1 to level 8. As Little Blossom kept transferring energy to her, Xiaoqing felt that her crystal core was full. Once it was full, it meant that she could try to break through. Chapter 644. At this moment, the energy was still flowing into her body. At least, she wouldn't be on the verge of failure due to lack of energy when breaking through. She had just reached level 7 not long ago. She went from beginner level 7 to intermediate level 7. Now she had reached the peak and was trying to break through level 8. During the breakthrough, Xiaoqing was very calm. She didn't rush the energy inside her crystal core too fast or too slow. She made the space inside her crystal core bigger and bigger, so that it could hold more energy. This was what she had discovered after a long time. Breaking through was to make the crystal core hold more energy, just like the storage space of a mobile phone. The storage space could store more energy, and the hardness of the body determined the storage space. Breaking through was a test of these 2 points. Even though Xiaoqing had a lot of experience, it still took her a long time to succeed. She sighed in relief and opened her eyes. Call Air Dai and Panpan in. Yin Chuyue had been watching from the side. Seeing this, she said, you can absorb more energy. It won't be a problem for you to reach the peak of level 8. I just reached level 8. The gap between me and the peak of level 8 isn't that big, especially for me. Instead of letting me reach the peak, it's better to create a few more level 8 paranormals. It's better for the base, Xiaoqing said calmly. After reaching level 8, she had the basic confidence. She just had to take it slow in the future. Yin Chuyue had no choice but to call Air Dai and Gu Panpan in. Xiaoqing called them over and said, you two should work harder. Try to absorb more energy. It'll be good if you can reach level 8. If there are more level 8 paranormals in Jiangqing City, we'll have more confidence in the future. Dummy and Gu Panpan sat on the side and prepared themselves. Little Flower's tentacles were like a bridge that connected them, sending energy into their bodies. After the two of them digested the first wave, Xiaoqing was relieved. They could absorb it, so it was much easier to deal with this. At this moment, Mulin suddenly came to Xiaoqing. "Ah Qing, go out and take a look. Something has happened outside." Xiaoqing frowned and looked at Little Bun. Little Bun's condition was much better now. At least the cracks on his body were slowly healing. This meant that the energy in his body was no longer enough to harm the surface of his body. Xiaoqing walked out with a little worry. What happened? The group of people who came for the transaction wanted to force us to buy and sell. They disliked us for offering too high a price. This time they brought some experts with them. I'm afraid that I won't be able to handle the situation. It's better to call you over first, Mulin said helplessly. Xiaoqing didn't know why Mulin said that until she arrived at the place. This time, several bases had come to make a deal with them. Each base had sent a paranormal above level 6. Some of them had even reached the peak of level 6. Although they weren't as strong as Xiaoqing, they weren't far behind. The most important thing was that they had more people. However, they came at a bad time. Xiaoqing had just broken through. Now she could crush level 6 paranormal as easily as crushing a few ants. She didn't feel any pressure at all. After arriving at the place, Xiaoqing sat in the middle and crossed her legs. Then she said, "I heard that some of you are not satisfied with the price. If you are not satisfied, you can tell me. I'm the easiest person to negotiate with." Her tone made people feel that she was showing weakness, but her actions were not weak at all. Her sharp eyes made people's scalps tingle. "That's right. We think that the price is really not appropriate. It's too expensive. In business, harmony breeds wealth. At least give us a reasonable price," one of the people in charge of the bases said. "Then tell me your ideal price." Xiaoqing said lazily. The person immediately said, 3 level 5 nuclei per cart. It can't be more expensive. The usual price was usually 10 nuclei per cart. Xiaoqing asked Tan Yezi to be more aggressive, so Tan Yezi asked for 20 nuclei. She didn't expect that this group of people would directly reduce the price to 3 nuclei. This was no longer business. This was simply daylight robbery. Xiaoqing waved her hand expressionlessly. "See them out. I'm not selling." Chapter 645. "Mayor Xiao, what's the meaning of this?" One of them said with an ugly expression. "We're all here. How can you not sell it just because you said so? It's mine. If I want to sell it, I'll sell it. If I don't want to sell it, I won't sell it. If you have any objections, just say it." "I'm listening," Xiaoqing said lazily. There were not many people who dared to be so arrogant in her territory. Even if they were not the first, they could be ranked in the top 3. You have to sell it even if you don't want to. We're all here. Are you trying to fool us? A paranormal said coldly. You want to force us to sell it? To put it bluntly, you're the one who came to my place to buy things. I'm not begging you. Letting you in is already an honor for you, Xiaoqing said indifferently. Do you think Jiangqing City is easy to bully? We don't dare. The leader was already at the peak of level 6, which was probably why he was so confident. He cupped his hands and said, Everyone knows how powerful Jiangqing City is. Even if we have great abilities, we don't dare to bully Jiangqing City. Then he said with a smile, We're all businessmen. Harmony breeds wealth. If we can't agree on the price, we can talk about it again. Why do you have to be so aggressive? He was very clear about Jiangqing's background, and he knew that the power of the higher-ups in Jiangqing wasn't something that the few of them could touch. However, if the few of them worked together, they would definitely be able to hurt Jiangqing badly. As long as Jiangqing wasn't retarded, he wouldn't fight with them. After all, they represented not only the level 6 paranormal, but also the bases behind them. Could Jiangqing City alone handle all the bases? The answer was definitely no. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the confidence to come here. Moreover, they had more than a few bases behind them. At first, they did want to buy things obediently. However, once they had the confidence, They would always do something crazy, such as provoking Jiangqing City. Xiaoqing looked at him and said, I don't see your friendliness. The door is here. I won't see you out. The man said indifferently, Mayor Xiao, we really want to do business. I'll say it one last time. Go. Xiaoqing closed her eyes. If this group of people left now, she wouldn't make a move on them. Although they didn't know how to leave a way out, she understood that if she wasn't forced into a corner, she wouldn't be willing to make a move on this group of people. However, there were some people who thought highly of themselves, especially those who became extremely arrogant after gaining strength. They felt that they could even poke a hole in the sky, such as the few people in front of them. One of the paranormals slammed the table and shouted, Xiaoqing, don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Xiaoqing suddenly opened her eyes. Who is the one who refuses a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit? She stood up and released her aura. Her eyes were cold. I don't want to have a conflict with others, but some people don't want it. I gave you a chance just now to let you leave with dignity, but you didn't want it. Now don't blame me for not giving you face. I don't know who gave you the courage to hit me. Oh no, it's talking. But today, I will tell you that when your face is swollen, you can't even move your mouth. Xiaoqing was really arrogant. Those paranormals all stood up. Mu Lin and the others were about to step forward, but Xiaoqing waved her hand and refused. She was the face of Jiangqing City. Sometimes, she had to take the lead and break their teeth. Only by letting them swallow their blood could they learn from their mistakes. Just when Xiaoqing was about to make a move, Gu Panpan walked out. Sister Qing, this kind of occasion is not worthy of you to make a move. Let me do it for you. You can all come together. I don't mind. Chapter 646. Gu Panpan was really too arrogant. Those who didn't know her background would think that she was only good at talking, especially those level 6 paranormals. They were immediately annoyed that they had been underestimated. After all, their strength had suddenly increased, and they felt that they were very powerful, so they were particularly concerned about their faces. Little did they know that their faces were nothing in the eyes of some people. Gu Panpan took a step forward and said, Hurry up if you want to fight. Don't be so wishy-washy like a girl. Those people couldn't stand it anymore. One of them came out to teach Gu Panpan a lesson. Gu Panpan activated her power and directly knocked him down. Seeing that the situation was not good, the others joined in. 3 minutes later, Gu Panpan knocked everyone down. She had successfully reached level 8. Now those who dared to fight with her would be knocked down. In the whole country, there were only a few level 8 paranormals. These people didn't even reach level 7. How dare they come here to show off? They really didn't look in the mirror before going out. Those people lying on the ground were stunned. Wasn't Xiaoqing only at level 7 a few days ago? Wasn't she the strongest in Jiang City? It had only been a few days. How could there be a level 8 paranormals? Xiaoqing sat down on her seat and said lazily, In the future, before you come looking for trouble, you should first weigh your own weight. Not everyone is someone you can afford to provoke. As I said before, the door is over there. Let's go. The group of people who were aggressive just now all became mutes and left with their tails between their legs. They came here to take advantage of her, but when they left, they were like a group of stray dogs. People shouldn't be too confident. Too much confidence would often lead to a slap in the face, and the slap would be so loud that it would swell up like a big bun. After sending this group of people away, Xiaoqing pinched her forehead with a headache and said, I keep having the feeling that this matter isn't simple. They came at the right time. Moreover, 8 level 6 ability users appeared as soon as they came out, and all of them are at least at the intermediate level. This is really abnormal. I suspect that someone is behind this. Sister Qing, don't worry. I'm already a fake level 8 now. Gu Panpan was a little embarrassed. Brother, you said that my body isn't strong enough to support a breakthrough to level 8 immediately. So, I'm actually at the peak of level 7 now. It's just that there's too much energy in my body, so it gives people the illusion that I'm level 8. Take your time. Rome wasn't built in a day. You are now stronger than many people. Xiaoqing patted her head. These people in front of her would be the backbone of Rivertown in the future. She had to think of a way to raise everyone's strength. After all, her strength was limited. In the end, she still had to rely on everyone. At this stage of the apocalypse, it was no longer the time for individual heroes to flaunt their abilities. Xiaoqing was very clear about this. After a while, Air Dai also came out. He was a little better than Gu Panpan, officially breaking through to level 8. Inyi was about the same as Gu Panpan, at the peak of level 7. As long as he settled down and absorbed properly, he would definitely break through to level 8. Little Bun also benefited from the disaster and rushed all the way to level 8. What made people envious was that Little Bun had been sleeping all the time. Who else could be more relaxed than him when he was sleeping? So far, Rivertown had 3 level 8, a handful of level 7, and countless level 6. For example, Yan Hanqing and the others were only one step away from level 7. Perhaps they would break through one day. Now I can relax a little. There is a saying that is very true. A strong person can defeat 10 skilled people. Now, even if half of the country comes to besiege us, I won't be afraid. Xiaoqing heaved a sigh of relief. She hugged Little Bun and ran away, saying that she had been too tired recently and needed to relax. Xiaoqing assigned all the work and then went to slack openly. She brought Little Bun and the others in her house to play with Little Bun every day. The happiest one was probably Little Bun. Actually, Little Bun was very unhappy for a period of time because Xiaoqing was so busy that she didn't have time to play with him. Although he had friends to play with, it was still different. Since he was born, he and Xiaoqing were almost always together. They were rarely separated, but gradually, they spent more and more time apart. Xiaoqing spent more and more time on business and played with him less and less. Although Grandpa and his friends were with him, Little Bun still felt lonely and sad. However, no matter how sad he was, Little Bun wouldn't say it. He knew that as a well-behaved baby, he couldn't cause trouble for his mother. Mama had a lot of business to do. He understood all these reasons, but he also knew that he couldn't wait and not be sad. Fortunately, Mama had put down all the things she was busy with to play with him. He felt very happy. Xiaoqing didn't know why Mu Lin said that until she arrived at the place. This time, a few bases came to make a deal with them. Each base sent a mutant above level 6. Some of them had even reached the peak of level 6. Although they weren't as good as Xiaoqing, they weren't much worse. The most important thing was that they had a lot of people. However, they came at a bad time. Xiaoqing had just broken through. Now she could crush level 6 mutants like crushing ants. She didn't feel any pressure at all. After arriving, Xiaoqing sat in the middle, crossed her legs and said, "I heard that someone is dissatisfied with the price. If you're dissatisfied, you can say it. I'm the easiest person to talk to." Her tone made people feel that she was showing weakness, but her actions were not weak at all. Her sharp eyes made people's scalps tingle. "Yes, we think that the price is really inappropriate. It's too expensive. In business, harmony breeds wealth. At least give us a reasonable price," said one of the people in charge. "Then tell me your ideal price." Xiaoqing said lazily. That person immediately said, 3 level 5 nuclei per car. It can't be more expensive. The usual price was 10 nuclei per car. Xiaoqing asked Tan Yezi to be more aggressive, so Tan Yezi asked for 20 nuclei. She didn't expect that this group of people would directly reduce the price to 3 nuclei. This was no longer business. This was simply daylight robbery. Xiaoqing waved her hand expressionlessly. "See them out. I'm not selling them." Chapter 647. We're about to reach our territory. We'll contact him immediately when we get back. How can we not swallow the humiliation? The paranormal who spoke first said with a fierce face. "What humiliation?" A hoarse voice sounded behind them. The leader turned around in surprise. "You're here. We were just talking about you. Great. You saved us a lot of trouble." "You saved me a lot of trouble too." A man in a black cloak appeared behind them. He was covered from head to toe, and only a small part of his white chin was exposed. The tip of his chin was very white, so white that it looked sickly and transparent. The cloaked man laughed and said, "Although you guys are useless, you're still useful." Those people felt that something was wrong, and their faces changed. One of them forced a smile and said, "What do you mean?" "That's what I mean." As soon as he finished speaking, a bunch of black and red tentacles suddenly drilled out from under the cloak. Those tentacles were very ugly, and there were small bubbles on them. As soon as they came out, they quickly pierced into their skulls. Those people were about to struggle, but they found that they couldn't control their bodies. They could only watch the tentacles piercing into their skulls. When the tentacles pierced into their skulls, the small bubbles on them lit up one after another, as if they were charging. When they lit up to the root, the cloaked man burped with satisfaction. Sure enough, it tastes better this way. When the tentacles retracted, there was only a pile of corpses on the ground, and a few ordinary people who didn't have any superpowers. They sat on the ground and shivered. They were really scared. Some of them wet the ground under their buttocks. They were really scared out of their wits. The cloaked man patted his belly with satisfaction, then turned around and left. Those ordinary people thought that they were spared, and when they were about to run, their bodies suddenly exploded. They were all wiped out. Several bases had sent people to Jiang City to buy food, but they never returned. It was a few days later than the return time, and there was no news. Anyone with a discerning eye knew that something had happened to those people. Those who went out this time were the strongest in each base. Some bases even sent 2 high-level paranormals. But in the end, it was all for naught. However, they didn't even have the chance to see a splash before they sank to the bottom. No one was willing to be involved in this matter. They couldn't go to the other bases, so they could only ask Jiangqing City. Xiaoqing was still angry. She was already angry when she found that little Bun was lying on the bed, and she didn't know whether he was dead or alive. Now a group of people came to provoke her. They wanted to come over and slap them in the face, but they ended up getting slapped instead. After running away with their tails between their legs, they turned around and asked them for the person they wanted. Xiaoqing directly replied to the person who came to ask for information. Who knows where he went? Maybe he was eaten by a stray dog on the way. Who does Jiang City want? The people from the other bases were also mad. Although they went there to pick a fight, they didn't think they were wrong. They were human beings, while Xiaoqing was a zombie. No matter what, they were righteous and didn't do anything wrong. If Xiaoqing heard those words, she would definitely feel disgusted. Those people had never changed day after day, year after year. They were all the same. Even if they started a war immediately, she wouldn't be afraid. After all, she had the power to rule the world. Jiang City's current power was already the top of the top. If those bases came over, they would just be delivering food to them. To put it bluntly, as long as it wasn't a base like the capital, Xiaoqing didn't need to send many people to destroy a group of top experts. Chapter 648. The only thing she was worried about was the person behind the scenes who had been targeting them. The unknown was the most dangerous, because you never knew how strong they were, what their goals were, and what they wanted to do. Maybe you were fighting with someone in front of you, and they would stab you in the back. After all, it was impossible to guard against them in the dark. As long as they were in the open, it would be easy to deal with them. Xiaoqing was relatively calm now. At least her thoughts were organized. After all, Jiang City was in the open, and that person was in the dark. The only thing she could do was to deal with all kinds of changes by sticking to the status quo and acting safely. After the bases lost their top experts, they all panicked. After all, top experts were very useful to a base. They had a strong deterrent force, and were also the face of a base. They had to find their previous partners again, hoping to create more experts. They were willing to pay a certain price in exchange. The price included zombie crystal nuclei, alien energy, and some ordinary people. It was a good deal for them to use these things in exchange for some experts above level 6. After receiving the news, the cloaked man went over happily. He liked to get more food reserves, and he liked to cause trouble for Jiang City. The 2 people he hated the most in his life were both in Jiang City. He wanted to destroy that place even in his dreams. You are finally here. One of the base chiefs breathed a sigh of relief. and then said, "How about according to the letter? I can give you a few ordinary people, but there are not many advanced crystal nuclei left. Okay, I can give you 12 of them. You can distribute them yourselves. Each one can make a level 5 paranormal rise to the peak of level 6. Of course, if your physique is too weak, the effect will be a little worse." The cloaked man stretched out his hand, and a small pill appeared in his hand. The pill was black, wrapped in a layer of transparent skin, and was only the size of a fingernail. Although it was just a small thing, it could allow people to reach the sky in a single bound. It wasn't that no one had ever tried to get their hands on the formula, but those people had already died. They had died very miserably, and their families had also died mysteriously. Another person had directly wiped out the entire base. Not even a dog was left. They felt that they were more sensible. Under such circumstances, they naturally gave up rationally. Besides, if the other party had the ability to create level 6 superpowered people, he himself must be above level 6. Moreover, if he had the ability to do so, wouldn't he be able to create some level 6 ability users? Therefore, he couldn't do anything about it. After receiving the corresponding goods, the cloaked man happily left. It was great to have another batch of food reserves. The people in the bases immediately gathered some level 5 paranormals, who had relatively good physiques, and distributed the pills. Each base was given 2 pills, which meant that each base could create 2 level 6 paranormals out of thin air. In fact, they were still not very satisfied, but they had no more things to exchange for pills, so they could only give up for now. Those whose strength has increased, go and stabilize your strength first. Try your best to familiarize yourself with your abilities after level 6. Very soon, we might have to attack Rivertown. One of the base chiefs sneered. Each of their bases had lost 2 level 6 paranormals in exchange for countless supplies. Even if they didn't feel sorry for the people, they would feel sorry for the supplies. Moreover, those who could be promoted to level 6 among the first batch must have a good relationship with the base chiefs. There might even be some of their relatives among them. However, they had gone missing just like that. Generally speaking, missing people were almost as good as dead, especially in the post-apocalyptic world. There was an 80% chance that they were already dead. The base chiefs had to vent their anger. Others start to organize our paranormal's army. Rivertown is too arrogant. We have to teach them a lesson to let them know that we humans still have the final say in this world. The base chief said passionately. Of course, these were all reasons. The most important thing was that they were jealous of Rivertown's supplies, vegetables, grains, and fruits. These were all what they needed the most now. It would be best if they could take down Rivertown directly. It could be used as their plantation base. At least, they could wait until the poison dissipated, and they could plant new crops again. Perhaps they could also use this opportunity to raise the status of their bases. With those grains and vegetables, they could rope in some other allies. In short, there were many benefits. The more benefits there were, the more eager they were to attack Rivertown. They didn't have the confidence before, because there were too few top-level paranormals. As everyone knew, Xiaoqing was a level 7 zombie. In Rivertown, there were several level 6 paranormals. Adding up all their bases, there were only 1 or 2 level 6 paranormals. How could they compete with Rivertown? But now they had the confidence. They had 12 level 6 paranormals. If one of them couldn't defeat Xiaoqing, they could bring a few more. After all, they had more people. I think we can gather more people. It will be safer that way. A base chief thought for a moment, then said, "No ability user can resist the temptation of leveling up quickly. Let's gather a few more bases. For example, if there are more than 2 level 6 ability users in one base, we'll contact a few more bases and have at least 20 or 30 level 6 ability users. It'll be very easy to flatten Rivertown." They didn't know that Rivertown already had several level 8 paranormals. They were very happy. They felt that they were very strong and could soon beat Rivertown. Rivertown had been showing off for too long. They couldn't stand it. They had been waiting for this day for a long time. Several bases began to contact each other secretly. Some of them didn't get along with Rivertown. After a discussion, they found the cloaked man and bought some small pills from him to produce high-level paranormals. In his hands, not only did he have pills that could produce level 6 paranormals, but he also had pills that could produce level 7 paranormals. However, his pills were limited. For example, if you wanted to take a level 7 pill, you had to have at least level 6 paranormals. Otherwise, it would be useless. Moreover, each person could only take it once. In other words, as long as you took a level 6 pill, it would be useless to take another level 7 pill. Among these bases, there were 2 or 3 level 6 paranormals. After taking the pills, they quickly rose to level 7. As their levels increased, their ambitions also began to burn fiercely. Chapter 649. They felt that their current strength was enough to compete with Xiaoqing. Most importantly, Xiaoqing was alone, while they had several level 7 and level 6 paranormals. They had more level 6 paranormals than Rivertown. What was there to be afraid of? They had already forgotten about the annihilation of the Qian family, because they felt that it was normal for the Qian family to be annihilated. They were different. They were awesome and could totally destroy Rivertown. Therefore, they began to prepare to attack Rivertown. Before the attack, they had already started to discuss how to divide Rivertown. They had to admit that they were really confident. While they were discussing, Xiaoqing was no longer in Rivertown. She had left with Little Bun. If it was in normal times, she might not be in a hurry to find the 8th plant. However, it was different now. There was a man who had evil intentions towards Rivertown. There were also a group of people who were eyeing Rivertown covetously. She really couldn't be at ease. Only by increasing her strength could she be at ease. Xiaoqing didn't dare to leave with too many people. After all, she didn't know when someone would attack Rivertown. She could only be at ease when there was at least a level 8 expert in Rivertown. Moreover, there were a few quasi-level 8 experts protecting Rivertown. Xiaoqing was sure that Rivertown would be safe. That was why she dared to go out and search. The place she went was the biggest canyon in the country. After the apocalypse, the cracks had become bigger. It was dark and damp below, which should be suitable for plants to grow. She had almost visited all the forests in the country. There were 2 bigger ones, but they were too far away from Rivertown. If there was a problem in Rivertown, she wouldn't be able to help. Therefore, she chose the canyon that was closer to Rivertown. The canyon was too deep. Xiaoqing carried her son, pulled the vines and slowly climbed down. After more than half an hour, she still hadn't reached the bottom. It wasn't a good idea to keep climbing down. Xiaoqing made a simple parachute with vines and flowers, and jumped down directly. The large flower covered the umbrella frame made of vines, and was blown into a mess by the wind. If it could speak, it would definitely be whimpering right now. Dragging the big flower, Xiaoqing fell all the way down. As she neared the ground, the petals of the big flower fluttered, perfectly covering the frame of the umbrella. The resistance immediately increased. Xiaoqing slowly floated a few times, and when she let go, she successfully landed on the ground. As soon as Xiaoqing landed on the ground, the big flower combined itself into a flower bud. The leaves wrapped around the flower head, making it look dispirited and pitiful. Xiaoqing threw a few crystallic nuclei to it. Only then did it open its flower head. It seemed to be quite happy. The big flower was really too easy to deal with. Xiaoqing touched its leaves and sighed. She didn't know whether she should be happy or not. It was so silly. After putting away the big flower, Xiaoqing prepared to explore forward. Because the canyon was too deep, it was completely dark below. She couldn't see anything at all. Xiaoqing carried the lantern flower, and carried Little Bun as she walked forward. It was really too humid below. On both sides of the mountain walls, there were condensed water droplets. The small water droplets were only the size of a fingernail, while the big water droplets were almost the size of a child's fist. All of them hung on the mountain walls and didn't slide down. Under her feet were layers of withered leaves that had accumulated over the years. The bottom layer was rotten and emitted a strange smell. It was a little pungent. Even with Xiaoqing's physique, she felt a little dizzy just by smelling it. She covered Little Bun's nose and had no choice but to use the vines to hold the lantern and walk forward slowly. The withered leaves under her feet were too thick. When she stepped on them, her calves sank. When she pulled them out, her shoes and trousers emitted a foul smell. Chapter 650. The stench was strong and oppressive, and the further they walked, the deeper their legs sank. In some places there were methane pits. Xiaoqing looked around. There was a thick layer of dead leaves on the ground, but there wasn't a single plant around. This didn't make sense in the first place. She used her finger to touch some of the water droplets on the cliff. The water droplets were sticky, as thick as blood. No wonder they didn't fall off when they stuck to the cliff. Xiaoqing observed carefully. There were more water droplets on the left side of the cliff. There were fewer water droplets on the right side, and they were smaller. So when there was a fork in the road, she decisively chose the left side. Logically speaking, the left side should have more water and was suitable for plants to grow. She carried Little Bun and walked in the canyon for more than half an hour. Not to mention plants, she didn't even see a single leaf. It was really strange. She didn't know how these dried leaves were formed. After walking for a while, Xiaoqing really couldn't take it anymore. The feeling in her feet was too uncomfortable. Every time she lifted her leg, she had to use a lot of strength. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to pull it out. If it wasn't for the fact that they had walked for so long, she really wanted to turn back and leave this lousy place. "Mama, what's that big brother doing?" Little Bun suddenly asked softly. He pointed in a direction, his eyes filled with curiosity. Little Bun was curious, but Xiaoqing was shocked. She followed Little Bun's gaze and looked over. He saw a young man standing in the corner. He looked to be about 11 or 12 years old. His appearance was quite delicate and pretty, especially his pair of big and black eyes. It was just that his clothes were tattered and his face was pale. With the background, he looked like a ghost. Xiaoqing's heart was filled with vigilance. Her 5 senses were pretty good, but this youth was so close to her, and she didn't even notice him. This was unbelievable. There were only 2 possibilities in this situation. The first was that the youth was more powerful than her, at least in the 9th level. The second was that the youth had some special ability. Of course, there was actually another possibility that was impossible, and that was that the youth wasn't human. The young man stood in the corner and looked at Xiaoqing curiously. He didn't seem dangerous at all. Xiaoqing didn't lower her guard because of this. She looked at the young man and slowly walked over. As she approached, the young man started to panic. But for some reason he didn't retreat. Instead, he stared at Xiaoqing with his big eyes. When Xiaoqing was very close to him, he was like a little rabbit and directly drilled into the soil. That's right, he drilled into the soil. Xiaoqing walked over to take a look. There was still a pile of dead branches and leaves on the ground, but the young man's figure was nowhere to be seen. Was he really not human? Brother looks so pitiful. Little Bun pouted and whispered. But why did he run away? We won't bully him. I don't know. Xiaoqing patted Little Bun's head and continued walking forward. Since the other party did not attack them, it meant that he had no enmity towards them. Since there was no enmity, and he wasn't an enemy, it didn't matter. Xiaoqing continued walking forward with Little Bun. After walking for a short distance, she heard Little Bun say, "Mama, that brother is following us." Xiaoqing turned around and saw the youth standing in the corner. When he saw her turn around, he drilled into the ground in a panic. Xiaoqing was a little curious this time. Since he didn't have any ill intentions, why was he secretly following them? After these 2 times, Xiaoqing was on her guard. She secretly observed and found that after a while, the youth appeared again. He was still secretly following behind them and didn't come close. He just looked at them curiously. Chapter 651. When he realized that Xiaoqing had not discovered him, he would quietly move closer. Just like that, he inched forward bit by bit. Soon, he was not far away from Xiaoqing. When Xiaoqing was about to reach the end of the canyon, he was only 2 to 3 meters away from Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing suddenly turned around and asked, "Why are you following us?" The youth jumped in fright. His first reaction was to burrow into the ground, but when he looked down, he saw that there were dense vines beneath his feet. They were intertwined with each other, and sealed the ground. Tears welled up in the youth's eyes. He hugged his head and squatted on the ground, looking like he was waiting to be beaten. He looked very practiced. Xiaoqing walked over and touched his head. His hair was icy cold, but it felt good to the touch. The expected pain did not come. The youth covered his face and peeked at Xiaoqing through the gaps between his fingers. Xiaoqing's face did not have any expression, but there was no malice. There was also a little bun looking at him curiously. He reached out his finger and poked his cheek. The youth was originally very afraid, but slowly, he stopped being afraid. He reached out his finger and gently poked the little bun's cheek. Then, a very innocent smile appeared on his face. Xiaoqing tried to pull the youth up from the ground. Only then did she realize that he had no legs. His lower body was only a white and tender root. He was really not human. Being forced to reveal his root was probably a very embarrassing thing for the youth. His cheeks were slightly red, but he did not avoid it. He obediently allowed Xiaoqing to touch his root. What a soft and tender little Shota. Can you speak? Xiaoqing asked curiously. The youth was stunned for a long time. He puffed up his cheeks and looked like a groundhog. After a while, he opened his mouth and made a small sound of acknowledgement. That sound was so weak that it was almost non-existent. Xiaoqing helplessly touched his head again and said, "Why are you following me?" The young man blinked and said shyly, "I haven't seen you in a long time." His voice was slightly hoarse, as if he hadn't spoken for a long time. However, one could tell that his voice was actually very pleasant to the ears. The little bun stretched out his head and looked at the young man curiously. "Big brother, do you want to come to my house to play? There are many people there." The young man was pleasantly surprised, but in the end, he shook his head dejectedly. "I can't walk. Is there no way to leave here?" Xiaoqing felt a little distressed. Although she didn't know what species he was, she couldn't help but feel sorry for him when she saw such a shy young boy in such a low state. This was probably the overflowing love of a mother. The young man plucked up his courage and pointed at himself. "Can man play with me? My name is Xiaoqing. This is my son Xiaozi. Although we won't stay here for long, if you don't mind, you can follow us for 2 days. Can you walk?" Xiaoqing really liked the feel of his hair. It was smooth, soft, and cold. The young boy's eyes lit up, and he nodded happily. He showed that he could use his roots to move, but it was a little slow. The little bun immediately stretched out his finger to hold his hand and started to ramble. "It would be great if you could leave. My house is very big, and there are many friends and delicious food. I can let you sleep on my big bed and play with my yaya." The young boy's eyes lit up as he listened, but the bottom of his eyes was very dim. They walked for a while. The little bun said something, and the young boy whispered in the end, "Do you want to play in my house?" You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.